Chapter 946. Tens of thousands of miles of land in the Demon Zone. The Demon Palace's Saint, Double Kuei, and 3 sects had just returned. As soon as they appeared, a demon general immediately stepped forward. Saint, the Demon Lord wants you to meet him immediately after you return. Jie Tiance heard this and a strange look flashed across his eyes. He asked, "What happened?" When the Saint and the other lords left, the 9th son of Mo clan took the opportunity to sneak in and took away the holy glory. The demon general answered truthfully. Jie Tiance's face immediately darkened. How could this happen? After thinking for a moment, Jie Tiance glanced at the Double Kuei and 3 sects behind him and said, "Go back to the palace and rest first." The Double Kuei and 3 sects nodded and went back to their own palaces. After everyone left, Jie Tiance gathered his thoughts and walked to the deepest part of the Demon Zone. In the forbidden land of the Demon Zone, the endless demon land was silent and cold. The Demon Palace's saint in a blue brocade coat walked over. His calm eyes flashed a few times. "Demon Lord." In front of the demon cave, Jie Tiance bowed and greeted. As soon as he finished speaking, a faint brilliance rose in the demon cave. An unprecedentedly terrifying pressure rose, so heavy that it was shocking. "Saint, has the underworld been destroyed?" In the faint brilliance, a majestic voice asked. Jie Tiance shook his head. At the last moment, Prince Qi Lin Yuzhen and the master of Ji family arrived with reinforcements and saved the underworld. "Oh!" In the demon cave, a surprised voice sounded. "The Ji family, the demon palace didn't provoke them, but they provoked us first. It seems that they have forgotten the lesson after tens of thousands of years." Jie Tiance bowed and said respectfully, "Prince Qi Lin Yuzhen and the 9th son of Mo clan have a close relationship. It's not surprising that they sent reinforcements. The Ji family must have had no choice but to help. After all, the Ji family and Beiki are neighbors. They must understand the principle of mutual dependence. Since they provoked us, the Demon Palace can't not respond. Let's set the next target as Lingshu." The Demon Lord's voice came from the demon cave. Jie Tiance was silent. After a moment, he said, "The Hall of the Dead exists at the border of the Spirit Void Realm. If the Devil Palace attacks the Spirit Void Realm, we may face both the Ji family and the Hall of the Dead at the same time. As for the Hall of the Dead, I will personally deal with it. You don't have to worry about it. Just focus on dealing with the resistance from the Ji family and the underworld." The Devil Master replied from within the Devil Cave. "Yes," Jie Tiance replied respectfully. "Also, holy glory cannot be lost. Seize it back as soon as possible." The imposing voice rang out from the Devil Cave once more. "Yes," Jie Tiance replied again. "You may leave." "This subordinate will take his leave." Jie Tiance bowed and walked out of the forbidden area. In the Holy Palace, Jie Tiance walked back. In the palace, a young man in white stood quietly. He looked at the saint of the Demon Palace and smiled. "What's wrong? Did the Demon Lord's decision disrupt your plan?" Jie Tiance shifted his gaze and looked at the white-robed man in the hall. He asked calmly, "Why are you here instead of resting in your own palace?" "The excitement in my heart can't be quelled for the first time since I met an expert like the 10 Kings of Hell, so I came to have a chat with the saint." Tian Kuei smiled. Jie Tiance walked up the steps and looked at the embers beside the throne that had been burned down by the phoenix fire. He said calmly, "If you are interested in them, you can help me capture one of them. Dead or alive, it's fine." Tian Kuei's expression changed. "Even dead ones are fine?" "Sure." Jie Tiance replied calmly. "That's strange. What use do you have for a dead person?" Tian Kuei asked, puzzled. "What I want to know the most now is what these people look like under their masks. It's impossible for so many experts to appear in this world out of nowhere. Perhaps the identities of these people will give us a surprise," Jie Tiance said calmly. Tian Kuei narrowed his eyes. After a long time, he nodded and said, "Wait for my news." As soon as he finished speaking, Tian Kuei turned around and disappeared with a step. Jie Tiance stood quietly beside the throne. He looked at the traces left behind in the palace and fell into deep thought. At the same time, in the underworld, Bakey, the Ji family, and the underworld had gathered to discuss the alliance. The three people at the head of the table, Prince Qi Lin Yuzhen, Ji family's Holy Lord Ji Yuechu, and the underworld's Lord of the Underworld's King Yen Luo Hall, proposed an alliance to attack and defend together. Today, the leaders of the three major forces represented the inheritances of the three forces and officially formed an alliance. Below them, the four kings of Bakey, the Ji family's Grand Elder Jiao, and the underworld's five kings all nodded without any objections after reading the draft of the alliance document. Now that they were facing a great enemy, there was no need for them to fight over small benefits and hurt the harmony of the alliance. Prince Qi, why don't I see Mr. Ning? Among the three people at the head of the table, Ji Yuechu spoke with a smile. Brother Ning has something to do and can't make it. Therefore, he asked me to represent him, Lin Yuzhen replied softly. Hearing this, Ji Yuechu nodded and said, "That's good. Mr. Ning's strength is unfathomable. If he's willing to help, our strength against the Demon Palace will increase greatly." Beside him, the red-clothed Yama nodded and said, "Previously, the ninth son of the Mo clan had joined forces with the underworld. The underworld also welcomes this person." Lin Yuzhen nodded and looked at the people below. She said calmly, "If no one has any objections, the alliance is complete. Next, we will discuss how to resist the invasion of the Demon Palace." Below, the three inheritors looked at each other and nodded in agreement. "Your Excellency King Yama, you have fought with the Demon Palace several times. I'm sure you have some understanding of them. Do you have any good ideas?" Ji Yuechu asked seriously. "I don't dare to say that I have good ideas, but I do have some suggestions." The red-clothed Yama said calmly, "The twin chiefs of heaven and earth of the Demon Palace, the Sun Moon Star sect, and Jun Wenian, who was the leader of the four guardians in the past. These 6 people's strength are almost above the half-step to the 4th realm. If we can't get rid of these powerful forces of the Demon Palace, we won't have any chance of winning even if we join forces. Therefore, the most important thing now is to weaken the top forces of the Demon Palace as much as possible. Even Prince Qi and I won't have an easy time dealing with the strong people above the half-step to the 4th realm. Moreover, the Demon Palace has these 6 people on the surface. This matter is very difficult," Ji Yuechu said with a serious expression. "If we can't defeat them with brute force, we will use our wits." The red-clothed Yama said calmly, "After fighting with them several times, I have some understanding of the characteristics of these 6 people. Putting aside the Sun Moon Star sect for now, the twin chiefs of heaven and earth of the twin chiefs of heaven and earth, the earth of the twin chiefs of heaven and earth is an extremely conceited person. Relatively speaking, he is the most impulsive and his flaws are also the easiest to exploit." Also, a cold light flashed in the red-clothed Yama's eyes as he said, "Now, the one with obvious flaws is Jun Wenian, who once gave us a huge headache. Therefore, I suggest that we first plan to get rid of these 2 people and temporarily stabilize the situation." "Jun Wenian? What do you mean?" Ji Yuechu asked. "Of the 4 guardians of the Demon Palace, the Moon Weaver died in my hands. Even before she died, she still tried her best to protect Jun Wenian. It can be seen that the relationship between the 2 is extraordinary. Jun Wenian is now focused on revenge and has lost his usual calmness. In addition, he was severely injured by Shinji and his cultivation base has yet to recover to its peak. This is the best time to get rid of him," the red-clothed Yama said calmly. Ji Yuechu nodded lightly after hearing this. Attacking the enemy's heart was twice the result with half the effort. Now that the 2 armies were at war, it wasn't considered despicable. The Earth Chief is now the commander-in-chief of the Demon Palace's punitive army. Usually, there will be at least 2 people from the 3 sects guarding her. If we attack her, we must finish the battle as soon as possible. Otherwise, once the 3 sects are free, all our previous efforts will be in vain," the red-clothed Yama said seriously. "It's possible to block the 3 sects for a while. However, in this world, who can get rid of a powerhouse above the half-step 4th realm in such a short period of time?" Ji Yuechu said seriously. "If 1 person isn't enough, then 2. If 2 isn't enough, then 3. Although the Earth Chief is strong, she still has her limits," the red-clothed Yama said calmly. If we mobilize so many people, the demon palace will definitely notice something. It's not appropriate. Ji Wechu shook his head. What if we have the help of the Chaos Scroll? The red-clothed Yama said slowly. Ji Wechu's expression changed when he heard this. He said, the Chaos Scroll of the 10 Scrolls of the Heavenly Tomes. The red-clothed Yama nodded and said calmly, the Chaos Scroll is now in Mr. Ning's hands. As long as he is willing to help, it will be easy to hide our tracks for a short period of time. Just as the three sides were discussing how to resist the Demon Palace, at the border of the Spirit Void Domain, in the Forbidden Land of Absolute Beginning, a gloomy ghost energy lingered around. Not a single blade of grass grew within 1,000 miles. Amidst the fog, a majestic hall stood quietly. A powerful and heavy pressure constantly spread out from the depths of the hall, causing one to shudder. The Hall of the Dead was the strongest inheritance that was once as famous as the underworld. But after the erosion of time, it was now far from its former glory. Inside the Hall of the Dead, two powerhouses stood tall. One was dressed in black like a demon. His aura was powerful, causing others to feel fear. The other was dressed in silver like a god. His temperament was noble and extraordinary. Mo Luo Tian and Di Ming Tian, two people who came from different regions, gathered together once more. They sat and watched the changes in the world. After recuperating for tens of thousands of years, the Demon Palace's current strength is truly amazing, Mo Luo Tian said as he looked at the clouds outside the hall. This world has been silent for too long. The appearance of the Demon Palace and the reshuffling of the various forces isn't a bad thing, Di Ming Tian lightly said. I'm just afraid that the Demon Palace will really quell the various resistance forces and unify the star regions, Mo Luo Tian said. How difficult is it to unify the world? The underworld and the Hall of the Dead were both stronger than the current Demon Palace. But they still couldn't unify the world. The Demon Palace's path forward won't be too smooth. We only need to wait and see, Di Ming Tian calmly said. At this time, above the Forbidden Land of Absolute Beginning, demonic clouds swirled. An abnormally terrifying aura pressed down, surpassing the heavens and earth and shaking the world. They're here. Hallmaster, prepare to welcome the guests. Di Ming Tian lightly said as he looked at the horizon. As his voice fell, a figure shrouded in demonic energy slowly descended from the demonic clouds. The moment his feet touched the ground, the entire Forbidden Land of Absolute Beginning began to shake violently. The demonic clouds took shape. Separated by the endless starry sky, just a wisp of his consciousness suppressed the aura of all the powerhouses of the Hall of the Dead. Mo Luo Tian walked to the front of the hall. Looking at the figure gathered by the demonic clouds, he said, "The Demon Lord has graced us with his presence. Please forgive me for not going out to meet you." Chapter 947. In the Forbidden Land of Absolute Beginning, the winds and clouds changed. The Demon Lord had arrived, and a trace of his consciousness shook the entire area. Inside the Nether Hall, Mo Luo Tian walked to the front of the hall and personally welcomed the arrival of the Devil Palace Lord. "Devil Lord, please forgive me for not going out to meet you," Mo Luo Tian calmly said. "You're too courteous, Hallmaster." The shadow formed by the demonic clouds opened its mouth and said indifferently, "I have come to inform you that the demonic palace is ready to send troops to the spirit void." Hearing this, Mo Luo Tian narrowed his eyes and said, "Is this a warning from the Devil Lord to my Nether Hall?" "Yes and no." Within the demonic clouds, the Demon Lord's voice rang out once more. "The Demon Palace has no intention of becoming enemies with the Hall of the Underworld. I promise that the Demon Palace will never encroach upon the territory of the Hall of the Underworld. I have shown my sincerity, and I hope that your Highness can show the same sincerity." When Mo Luo Tian heard this, a strange light flashed across his eyes. A moment later, he said, "Since the Demon Master is so sincere, my Nether Hall will naturally return the favor. As long as the Demon Master can keep his promise, my Nether Hall will not get involved in this mess." "I'll remember your promise, Palace Master. We'll meet again." As he spoke, the demonic clouds soared into the sky and returned to the dark clouds in the sky. In an instant, The dark clouds dissipated and everything returned to normal. In the hall of the underworld, Di Mingtun looked at the master of the underworld in front of the hall and said indifferently, "This demon lord's ambition is not small. It seems that the spirit void will be in a bloody storm for a long time in the future." Di Mingtian turned around and walked into the hall. He said calmly, "People who walk different paths cannot work together. Let's see how long the Devil Palace can last." In the all-heaven starfield, a white-clothed young man stood in the starry sky, moving forward neither hurriedly nor slowly. The Devil Palace's Tian Kuei was a mysterious and powerful expert of the Devil Palace. After the battle with the underworld, he had left the Devil region to carry out the orders of the Devil Palace's sage. At the same time, in the underworld, the kings of hell returned to their respective positions. The powerhouses of Beiki and the Ji family also left one after another, waiting for the right time to come. In King Yanlua's palace, Ningchen raised his hand and took off the evil face mask on his face. He walked out of the palace and looked at the departing crowd. His eyes flashed continuously. Being able to form an alliance with the Ji clan was of great significance in resisting the Devil Palace. As a lineage of divine blood, the Ji clan's resources could not be underestimated. With King Qi's help, they now had the qualifications to resist the Devil Palace. However, all of this was on the premise that the master of the demonic palace had not come out of seclusion. Once the demonic palace had a fourth-level combatant, the entire battle would tilt in their favor. "We have already formed an alliance with the Ji clan. Are you still worried?" The female Chang walked over and asked. Ningchen came back to his senses and looked at the female supreme who was walking towards him. He shook his head and said, "Balance is only what it looks like now. Although I don't want to think about it, no one can deny the existence of the Demon Lord. He is the one who will truly decide the direction of this war." Fourth realm. Nu Chang sighed softly and said, "The path of cultivation is long and arduous. In the past, when I was still in the Xiantian realm, I could only dream of stepping into the celestial realm. Now that I have painstakingly taken this step, the legendary fourth realm has appeared. Looking at the sky from the bottom of a well, you still don't know how high the sky is." Ningchen looked at the sky above his head and said calmly, "None of us know if there will be a higher sky after we walk out of this sky. Our knowledge will always be limited to what we can see with our eyes. It's narrow and even false." Knowing destiny, what are you cultivating for? Nu Chang asked softly. Ningchen nodded and looked back at the servant girl who was struggling with a table of pastries in the imperial palace behind him. He said softly, "I hope that they can always grow up without worries. I will not let them walk the same path that I have walked." "I am asking about your own dreams," Nu Chang said seriously. Ningchen fell silent. After a long time, he shook his head and said, "I have forgotten." Nu Chang sighed inwardly and did not ask any more questions. She changed the topic and said, "How confident are you in dealing with the Earth Chief?" 100%. Ningchen collected his thoughts and said calmly, "No matter how strong a person is, as long as their weakness is magnified, their strength will be greatly reduced. I will make a careful plan for this matter. When the time comes, I will have to trouble your majesty to take action again." "It is my duty," Nu Chang said softly. Mu Qianshang and the rest have returned to the inner realm. The combat power of the underworld is getting more and more tense. The burden on your shoulders will increase again. "It is no problem." Ningchen shook his head and smiled. "Now that I have the help of the Ji family and Beiki, all I need is to come up with a plan. Didn't Mu Qianshang say that I am full of evil thoughts? This is my strength, it is not too tiring." Nu Chang looked at the young man with dazzling white hair beside her. He is always so strong that people would unconsciously forget that he is actually not that different from them. Knowing destiny's strength and wisdom would always make people subconsciously rely on him. Perhaps even Mu Qianshang and the rest had forgotten that knowing destiny was not born with it. All of his wisdom were painstakingly thought out day and night without rest. Luo Xingchen has gone to look for a new spiritual vein. Once the news is sent back, I will immediately go and arrange it. If this place cannot be defended, it is not impossible to give up." Ningchen said. You must have spent a lot of effort here. Nu Chang said softly. Ning Chen smiled faintly and said, compared to the safety of my friends, this little bit of effort is not worth mentioning. Furthermore, if the Devil Palace wants to take over this place, they will have to pay a price. From tomorrow onwards, I will set up another time restriction outside the underworld. Female Supreme also has extraordinary attainments in the time restriction. I hope that Female Supreme can lend me a hand. Are you really planning to give up on this place? Nu Chang frowned. Ning Chen nodded and said, these days, I will turn the entire underworld into a forbidden land. Once the Demon Palace attacks again, this place will be our trump card to deal a heavy blow to them. Do they know? Nu Chang looked at the 10 halls and asked. They don't know yet. Ning Chen shook his head and said, once the new spiritual vein is found, I will tell them. It is still too early now. Knowing destiny. Nu Chang said. Ning Chen asked. Cherish the people in front of you. Nu Chang looked at the Hall of Impermanence not far away and said seriously. Ning Chen smiled and said, Nu Chang, don't worry. I know what to do. After saying what needed to be said, Nu Chang did not say anything else. After standing there for a moment, she walked towards the side hall. Ning Chen, I am going to deliver some snacks to Mistress Mu. In the back hall, walked out with a pastry box in her arms. She shouted and ran towards the Hall of Impermanence not far away. Don't stay for too long. It's getting late. Ning Chen said. Got it. Thin responded without even turning her head, and ran off into the distance like a wisp of smoke. In the Hall of Impermanence, ran over with the pastry box in her arms. Seeing the white-clothed woman standing quietly in the hall, she said happily, Mistress Mu, I am here to deliver some snacks. Mu Qingxue snapped out of his thoughts and looked at the girl running over. An undetectable smile appeared on his beautiful face and he said, put it down. Chapter 948. The 10 halls of the underworld had a short period of peace. All the Yama kings were cultivating and preparing for the upcoming war. On the vast continent of the underworld, knowing destiny in plain clothes walked forward. The aura of time flowed around him like waves, leaving traces on every inch of the land. Not far away, Nu Chang raised her hand to form a seal, helping knowing destiny to set up the divine restriction. In front of the 10 halls, the Yama kings walked out one by one. They looked at the figure in plain clothes in surprise. After 100 years, knowing destiny had become more powerful. A wise man was good at scheming. No one knew how many trump cards knowing destiny had. It was because of him that the underworld was able to contend with the terrifying Devil Palace. In 10 days, Ning Chen walked through every inch of the underworld. The marks of time were left behind. The entire underworld glowed. The divine restriction was about to be activated. The trapping immortal appeared and sank into the ground. It fell into the spirit vein below. In the next moment, a shocking scene happened. The trapping immortal's sword glowed red. The earth shook. Boundless spiritual chi gathered and entered the sword. It devoured everything in a destructive manner. In front of the 10 halls, the Yama kings felt it. They were shocked. What is knowing destiny doing? In front of the inconstant hall, Mu Qingxue in white walked out. She looked ahead. Her beautiful eyes flashed. Is he going to destroy this place? What is Ning Chen doing? Behind her, Bo was holding a plate of fruits. Her body swayed left and right with the shaking ground. Her face was full of dissatisfaction. Your master may be preparing to abandon this place, Mu Qingxue said. Hearing this, In Er's beautiful face flashed with surprise. She asked, where are we going? Luo Xingchen has already left to search for a new spiritual vein. This place has been exposed and we cannot stay here any longer. However, with your master's personality, even if it is useless, he will still use it for its final use. I believe this place will soon become a land of death. Mu Qingxue said softly. Er looked at her surroundings reluctantly. He had moved just like that without telling her. That was too mean of him. After an hour, the shaking of the underworld gradually calmed down. Deep underground, the trapping immortal sword floated. Red light flowed and continued to devour the spirit vein's power. Thank you for your hard work. Ning Chen turned his head and looked at the lady behind him as he spoke. Nu Chang nodded and said calmly, the divine restriction has been set up and can be activated at any time. Unfortunately, the immortal execution restriction is missing. Otherwise, with the 3 divine restrictions together, even if the Devil Master were to come, we would be able to deal with him for a while. I've only seen the celestial execution prohibition once in the Eastern deity domain, so I don't know much about it. I'll try my best to make up for the missing parts. However, don't have too much hope, Ning Chen said honestly. The transformations of divine prohibitions are complex and not something that can be grasped by humans. You are already rare in this world to be able to evolve the time prohibition and the yellow spring prohibition to such a degree. As for how many transformations of the immortal execution prohibition you can deduce, just try your best. There is no need to force yourself too much, the female Chang said seriously. Ning Chen nodded and said, let's go, it's time to go back. Counting the days, the news from the Devil Palace should have arrived. Nu Chang nodded and walked towards the palaces in the distance. In King Yama's palace, the 2 of them walked side by side. Just as they were about to enter the palace, they saw a divine restriction trembling in the sky. A phoenix spread its wings and descended from the sky. I'm back. Ning Chen turned around and looked at the figure descending from the sky and said, the phoenix dispersed and walked out. After 1 step, it came to the front of the King Yama's palace. It nodded and then returned to its original body. You can start preparing. Ning Chen looked at the female Chang, and beside him and said calmly. The female Chang, and narrowed her eyes and nodded slightly. At the same time, in the Devil domain, cultivators from the Devil Palace flew out endlessly and rushed towards the battlefield. The flames of war were about to rise. All forces were preparing with all their might and dared not be careless. Spirit Void Star Region, White Emperor City, Ji Family's Sacred Palace. A secret report was sent in. In front of the main seat, Ji Yuechu looked at the secret letter in his hand. After a while, Ji Yuechu destroyed the secret letter, stood up, and walked towards the back of the Sacred Palace. In the forbidden area of the Ji family, where the millions of formation runes were sealed, Ji Yuechu walked over. Looking at the dilapidated wooden houses in front of him, he bowed respectfully and said, the 73rd Sacred Lord of the Ji family, Ji Yuechu, respectfully invites the black and yellow ancestors to come out of seclusion. As soon as he finished speaking, in the forbidden area, the pressure of heaven and earth suddenly became heavy. In the 2 ancient wooden houses, a terrifying aura slowly awakened. The powerful energy shook the world. After a while, with a creak, the door of the wooden house opened. 2 old men in ancient clothes walked out. They looked at the master of the Ji family in front of them and said slowly, what's the matter? Fengming City, Beiki, in front of the Imperial Palace. Lin Yuzhen's slender hand clenched and destroyed the secret letter. Then she clenched her right hand and the Fengming sword flew out from the Imperial Palace behind her and disappeared into her hand. The day has finally come. Pass down my order. From today onwards, Fengming City will be closed to all guests. As soon as she finished speaking, Lin Yuzhen's figure flashed and turned into a stream of light, disappearing above the 9 heavens. At the border of the 3 domains, in the underworld, the kings of hell gathered in the King of Hell's palace. The war of demons was about to begin, and the kings were out again. Everyone, the result of this war is very important. So, I'm counting on you. Then, Ning Chen stood up, picked up the evil mask in front of him, put it on his face, and said, let's go. Below him, the kings of hell also stood up, put on their masks, and followed him out of the Imperial Palace. In the sky above the 10 palaces, the divine prohibition opened amidst the rumbling, and a king of hell in a light yellow robe walked out. Without any hesitation, he rushed into the distance. At the same time, in the demon region's holy palace, Jia Tiance looked at the sky in front of him and narrowed his eyes slightly. King Wuguan of the underworld, why did she come out alone? After King Wuguan left, the divine prohibition of the underworld closed again, and there was no longer any sound. Half a day later, thousands of miles away from the underworld, a dim light flashed, and figures appeared one after another. In the lead, the three bodies of knowing destiny came out together, followed by King of Hell and Wu Chang. The war of demons was about to begin, and everyone's heart was heavy. Haven't they arrived yet? The female Chang asked. According to the agreed time, they should be here soon. Ningchen looked at the starry sky in front of him and said calmly. The crowd did not wait for long. In the distant starry sky, 3 streams of light flashed in front and back, and the powerful aura made the surrounding stars pale in comparison. They're here. Looking at the 3 figures in front of him, Ningchen narrowed his eyes slightly and said. As his voice fell, the 3 figures arrived. Their leader was Prince Qi, who held a phoenix cry in his hand. He was dressed in royal robes and had a heroic air about him. Behind him, 2 old men in ancient robes looked over at the plain-clothed youth in front of them. They said, "Are you the Mr. Ning that the sacred lord spoke of?" "You flatter me." Ningchen stepped forward and politely bowed. With a respectful expression, he said, "Junior Ningchen greets the 2 seniors. Common courtesy is useless. We don't have much time. Let's continue on our way," Patriarch Black and Yellow said. Ningchen nodded. He glanced at the people behind him and calmly said, "Let's go." The female Chang, Luotian, and the others nodded. Their figures flashed as they followed him towards the distant battlefield. Chapter 949. At the border of Red Luan and Spirit Void, the army of the demonic palace marched forward. The leader of the army, Di Kuei, was dressed in a tight black battle suit, showing off her exquisite figure. Behind Di Kuei were 10 generals. Their powerful auras were faintly discernible. Their cultivation was at least above the true realm. Lord Di Kuei, the Spirit Void starfield is just ahead. At this moment, a black-clothed figure turned back and knelt down to greet Di Kuei respectfully. Hearing this, Di Kuei looked ahead and nodded. "Continue scouting." The black-clothed figure accepted the order and disappeared. "Lord, should we let the army rest for a day?" Behind him, a demon general asked. "Time is of the essence. Let's continue," Di Kuei said lightly. "Yes." The demon general obeyed and retreated again. The army of 100,000 continued forward. Demonic qi covered the sky like dark clouds, shocking everyone. In the Spirit Void territory, Ji Ming led the army of the demonic palace. Many figures appeared and stood on the path. Looking at the army of the demonic palace, their expressions turned serious. "Everyone, let's move," the red-clothed Yama said. Everyone nodded. Their silhouettes flashed as they rushed forward. "Phoenix Body, we'll leave the front to you." At the border of the starfield, Ningchen looked at the 2 figures and transmitted his voice. "Don't worry." The red-clothed Yama nodded. He didn't linger and rushed forward. After everyone left, Ningchen looked at the demon beside him and said, "Demon Body, get ready." The demon body nodded and took a step forward, disappearing. At the border of the 2 territories, streams of light sped up. In a few breaths, they were very close to the army of the demonic palace. In front of the army of 100,000 demons, Di Kuei felt the aura coming from the front and narrowed his eyes. "Di Kuei, we meet again." Everyone stopped. The red-clothed Yama looked at the black-clothed woman in front and said, "King of Hell, why are you in such a hurry to die? Do you have a death wish?" Di Kuei snorted and clenched his fist. In the surging demonic qi, the legend of Doomsday reappeared. Murderous intent overflowed, startling the gods and ghosts. "Sovereigns, are you still not going to show yourselves?" The red-clothed Yama glanced behind the Earth Chief and said coldly. As soon as the words left his mouth, the void rippled, and Master Xingyu walked out. He looked at the crowd in front of him and stepped forward. "Seniors, please." The red-clothed Yama said. The black and yellow forefathers of the Ji clan nodded. They stepped forward and stood in front of the Stellar Moon sect. "You are from the Ji family." Seeing the symbol on the 2 old men's robes, Sect Master Xingyu narrowed his eyes and said coldly. Patriarchs Black and Yellow said nothing. They took a step forward and attacked at the same time. Sensing the formidable cultivation of the duo, the twin masters of the Starry Moon sect dared not let their guard down. They hurriedly drove their starlight and demonic moons to fend off the 2 intruders. With a rumbling sound, the mysterious yellow starry moon shook. Terrifying waves of energy swept out. They were evenly matched, and no one was able to gain the upper hand. "Earth Chief, Your Excellency, please accept your death." The red-robed Yama waved his hand and held his sword as he spoke calmly. "With just the two of you?" The Earth Chief snorted coldly. His figure flashed, and his halberd split the sky and earth. Eternal instant. The demonic halberd approached. Behind the red-clothed Yama, King Chujiang moved. Under the ferocious mask, his red lips opened slightly. In an instant, time and space stopped. His words sealed the battle. Eternal instant stopped. On the side, the white-clothed figure moved. An extremely fast sword, an extremely fast shadow. The Cheng-Ing sword was unsheathed. The Earth Chief focused. He turned his body and avoided the sword light. The demonic halberd in his hand danced with an unstoppable momentum. The red-clothed Yama moved as well. The Avicii Hell Palace appeared in his hand and blocked the demonic halberd. The ghost and demonic weapons collided. The ferocious power shook the heavens and earth. The aftershock spread out. The Earth Chief advanced instead of retreating. He raised his hand and punched at the Yama in front of him. The fist arrived. Outside the battle, the woman moved. The 9 underworlds devour the sky shook the heavens and earth as she blocked the demonic fist. Seeing this, the Earth Chief immediately retracted his move. He spun his halberd, and his killing intent was overwhelming. Silent Samsara. In an instant, the Luo Shen reappeared with the power of the laws. She raised her hand to call for reincarnation and swallowed the demonic body. "Do you think it's that easy?" The Earth Chief shouted coldly. "A dragon sword." In an instant, the dragon roared and the divine halberd broke through the sky. 4 against 1, the Earth Chief is still not at a disadvantage. "I'm impressed." Outside the battle, Lin Yuzhen said calmly. With a wave of her hand, the phoenix cry was unsheathed. In an instant, the phoenix cry filled the sky. Sword Chi met the attack. The dragon and the phoenix clashed. With a boom, they both cried out. Prince Chi joined the battle. The battle tilted. With the 5 strong cultivators working together, the Earth Chief was at a disadvantage. The sword light cut through the armor. The Earth Chief barely dodged the sword in front of him. He waved his demonic halberd, and the demonic waves poured out. The woman raised her hand. The power of the 9 underworlds continued to spread, trying to swallow the demonic body. "Lords of the underworld, Prince Chi, the sacred minister was right. You did come to launch a sneak attack." As he spoke, the divine sun's brilliance illuminated the world. An unusually strong figure walked out and appeared in the battle. Mingyuzong. Everyone focused. Their faces darkened. The figures of the woman, Prince Chi, and the Luo Shen flashed. The 3 of them joined forces to block the leader of the 3 sections. Meng Yuzong's expression did not change. He raised his hand and activated the power of the stars. Blazing flames swept across the land and swallowed the battle. On the other side, the 3 strong cultivators left the battle. The pressure on the Earth Chief was greatly reduced. The demonic aura of the myth of Doomsday kept surging. The red-clothed Yama and the white-clothed Wu Chang crossed their swords and joined forces to fight the Earth Chief. However, the battle tilted quickly. "With only such strength, you dare to call yourselves Yama and Wu Chang. Where did you get your confidence from?" The Earth Chief sneered. His attacks were even more violent. The demonic halberd danced like a dragon, creating a rustling wind. "The battle has changed. Retreat." The red-clothed Yama's expression turned solemn. The white-clothed Wu Chang nodded. He took a step and quickly escaped. "Do you think you can escape?" The Earth Chief's figure swept out. The demonic halberd was raised to the sky. The 8-drought demonic dragon appeared and swallowed the 2. "Go." The red-clothed Yama waved his sword to block the demonic dragon. He groaned and took a few steps back. Seeing this, the white-clothed Wu Chang turned back and carried the injured Yama. They fought and retreated. In the other 3 battles, the Sun Sect, Moon Sect, and Star Sect looked at the battle that was getting farther and farther away. Their expressions turned serious. Being distracted in battle is too disrespectful to us. Under the Yama mask, Luofei raised her hand. Suddenly, the wind and clouds in the sky changed. Thunder and lightning covered 100 miles. In the distance, Yama was injured, and the battle was getting more dangerous. The white-clothed Wu Chang fought and retreated. He was distracted to protect Yama, and his speed was severely restricted. At this moment, another change occurred. Behind the two, the void swirled. A figure in the water cloud battle suit appeared. He turned his palm and condensed yuan. He imprinted it on the white-clothed Wu Chang's back. With a groan, blood splattered. The white-clothed Wu Chang staggered a few steps. He looked at the figure that appeared behind him with shock. Jun Wenin, it's you? Seeing the figure that appeared in the battle, the Earth Chief frowned and said, "Why are you here?" The Yama of the underworld is on the move. The Saint Arbiter is worried that something will happen here, so she asked me to come and help. Jun Wenin said indifferently. He stepped forward and said, "Earth Chief, I have an irreconcilable enmity with the Yama King of the underworld. Can you give this person to me?" The Earth Chief's eyes narrowed. After a moment, he nodded and said, "Yes." "Thank you." Jun Wenin replied softly. He looked at the two injured people in front of him. He turned his right palm. In an instant, demonic aura surged and gathered from all directions. The majestic demonic might shook the world. "Now I'll send you on your way." As soon as he finished speaking, Jun Wentian's figure rushed out. A shocking scene occurred. The afterimage disappeared, and the demonic figure appeared behind the Earth Chief. A shocking palm landed on the latter's chest. With a groan, blood spurted out of the Earth Chief's mouth. He was caught off guard, and half of his heart meridians were shattered. The Earth Chief turned around and looked at the figure behind him. He said in shock and anger, "You're not Jun Wenin." "Of course I'm not Jun Wenin." As he spoke, the demonic figure raised his hand and put on the evil face mask. He said indifferently, "The Wu Chang of the underworld has been waiting for a long time. Earthly Chief, are you satisfied with this round?" At this moment, the void rolled and a plain-clothed figure walked out. He looked at the woman in front of him and said calmly, "The 9th son of the Emo sect." The Earth Chief vomited another mouthful of blood. He looked at the figure that appeared with hatred. He couldn't hide his murderous intent. "Friends of the underworld, thank you," Ningchen said with a smile. The two Wu Chang of the black and white nodded quietly. They didn't say much. Their figures flashed, and their killing moves were deadly. The sickly king's appearance blade covered the sky with black flames. It was hard to distinguish its speed. The black and white Wu Chang of the black and white Wu Chang of the black and white Wu Chang of the underworld joined hands. Their killing moves were like a storm, endless. With the serious injury in front of him, the Earth Chief's body couldn't be used. He fell into a dangerous situation. Yama Judgment, Yellow Springs Extradition. With a light shout, the White Tiger Slaughter Divine Weapon appeared again. The Yama's Divine Zither appeared. Ning Chen's body was fully activated. He concentrated his Yuan energy, and a mysterious sound echoed. The Yama's Divine Zither was full of killing intent. The Earth Chief blocked the two swords with his halberd. Before he could react, the killing Zither entered his body, and his consciousness was in intense pain. The mysterious sound devoured his soul. The Earth Chief's body staggered. The two swords pressed down on the halberd and pierced into the demonic figure's body. The Earth Chief took a few steps back. Blood kept dripping from the corner of his mouth. He looked at the two people in front of him. He raised his hands and grabbed the two swords that entered his body. "Let's go to hell together." The Earth Chief's true chi surged. In an instant, a violent demonic aura surged out, shaking the stars in the sky. "You want to die together with me? You're not qualified." As he spoke, the red-clothed figure flashed. In an instant, a sword went for the throat. "You!" The Earth Chief was shocked by the unbelievable scene. The speed, he knew the truth, but he couldn't say it. Blood spurted out of the Earth Chief's throat, dyeing the sky red. In the distance, the Sun Sect, Moon Sect, and Star Sect felt it. Their expressions changed. They flipped their palms, shook off the battle and rushed forward. Retreat! In the battle, they didn't continue fighting. Their figures flashed and disappeared. In front of the spirit void territory, Ningchen looked at the dead Earth Chief. He sighed and said, "Retreat." The Earth Chief was undoubtedly a strong warrior. It was a pity that he died in a conspiracy. However, this was war. In the next moment, the four figures flew away. They turned into streams of light and disappeared into the starry sky. After a few breaths, the Sun Sect, Moon Sect, and Star Sect arrived. Seeing the dead Earth Chief, their faces turned ugly. Chapter 950. After the battle in the Spirit Void Weave, the Yamakings of the underworld quickly retreated, leaving no trace behind. The Sun Sect, Moon Sect, and Star Sect arrived before the collapsing star. They brought the Earth Chiefs who had died in battle away from the battlefield. Inside the Devil Palace's sacred hall in the Devil Domain, Jietians, who was dressed in a blue brocade robe, was deep in thought. All of a sudden, his expression changed to one of disbelief. How could this be? Saint Priest. At this moment, in the main hall, the void swirled, the divine sun appeared, and the three sects appeared. In the middle, Meng Yuzong carried the corpse of the Earth Chief who had died in battle and stepped forward. Earth Chief. Jietians extended his hand and immediately dropped it. He clenched his fists tightly as his killing intent involuntarily overflowed and filled the entire sacred hall. What happened? Jietians lifted his gaze and looked at the three sects before him. Reporting to the Saint Minister. Miao Yuzong opened his mouth and reported everything that happened before in detail. When Jietians heard this, the light in his eyes became colder and colder. It turned out that King Wuguan of the underworld had made a move just to attract his attention. However, what he couldn't figure out was how the underworld had managed to hide from his eyes by sending so many experts. The ninth son of Mo Gate, the Black and White Impermanence, and the King of Hell. Jietians said in a low voice, although the four of them were powerful, the earthly chief was not weak either. Even if he was no match for them, he should have been able to hold on until you came to his rescue. Why did he die so quickly? This is what we don't understand. Miao Yuzong's expression turned serious as he said, the Earth Chief was set up to leave the battlefield. By the time we noticed, the Earth Chief's aura had already disappeared. Upon hearing this, Jietians silently stepped forward to take the Earth Chief's corpse. He then turned around and walked towards the back of the sacred hall. In the Spirit Void Starfield, many figures flew past. After traveling for half a day, everyone stopped and said their goodbyes. The Ji family, the Black-Yellow race, and Lin Yuzhen were the first to rush towards the White Emperor planet. After the three of them left, the Yamakings of the underworld didn't delay any longer. Instead, they changed directions and hurried back to the underworld. At the border of the three regions, thousands of miles away from the underworld, King Wuguan had completed his mission as bait to lure the demonic palace's attention away. At this moment, demonic clouds surged above the starry sky, and an abnormally terrifying aura pressed down. White-robed walked out from the demonic clouds. He looked at King Wuguan of the underworld, and a smile appeared on his face. King Wuguan, what a coincidence, Tian Kuei softly said. Tian Kuei. Under the Yama mask, Qi Yanxia's expression turned serious as she spoke slowly. The Holy Arbiter has ordered me to bring one of you back. Since we've met by coincidence, please allow yourself to be captured. Tian Kuei smiled. What if I say no? Qi Yanxia asked in a low voice. That's a pity. Tian Kuei sighed and landed. He looked at the person in front of him and raised his hand. Please. Qi Yanxia's eyes narrowed, and purple gas surged out of her body. The dynasty's fate was added to her body, and she activated the genuine qi around her. Tian Kuei raised his hand, and demonic qi gathered in the sky. With a palm strike, the winds and clouds of the 9 heavens changed. Extreme Emperor Heaven Scripture, Galaxy Brilliance. The celestial scripture of the Emperor reappeared. Qi Yanxia activated all her martial arts to block the demonic palm that was descending from the sky. The destiny of the mortal realm blocked the demonic waves. With a loud bang, Yama was pushed back, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. There was a clear disparity between their cultivation levels. Just one move was enough to determine the outcome of the battle. Qi Yanxia's gaze swept across the surrounding demonic qi, and a serious look flashed across her eyes. This was troublesome. Trying to escape? Tian Kuei smiled. It's a pity that you won't have the chance. Surrender to avoid suffering. The Yama of the underworld can only die in battle. Qi Yanxia said coldly. Her figure flashed, and the dynasty's destiny crazily surged out. 8 dragons gathered, shocking the world. Extreme Emperor Heaven Scripture, 8 dragons defying the world. The peak martial arts of the Extreme Emperor Heaven Scripture appeared. In an instant, the roars of dragons filled the sky. 8 dragons coiled around each other and charged toward the demonic cultivator in front. This was a shocking move that could make ghosts and gods flee. Even someone as strong as Tian Kuei had a serious look on his face. With a low shout, the demonic qi around him surged, forming a barrier in front of him. The 8 dragons shaking the demonic qi rumbled and resounded through the starry sky. The might of the 8 dragons shook the heavens and the earth. The demonic qi barrier shook violently, showing signs of collapse. After a moment of stalemate, the 7 dragons dissipated one after another. The last dragon broke through the restraints and charged toward the demonic cultivator in front of him. Tian Kuei raised his hand to block the dragon qi. With a thump, he took half a step back. What a strange martial art. Your identities are making me more and more interested. The smile on Tian Kuei's face became even more brilliant. He took a step forward and instantly charged forward. He raised his hand and slapped out. Demonic waves surged like the waves of the sky. Every movement of his caused the stars to shake. It was extremely terrifying. After exchanging several blows, blood dyed her battle clothes. Qi Yanxia flipped her palm and shook off the battle. She looked at the supreme expert of the demonic palace in front of her and shouted. Her true essence surged and her long hair danced wildly. Extreme Emperor Heaven Scripture, Samsara Blood Prison. True essence flowed in reverse and broke through the restraints. Qi Yanxia's body surged with a bloody mist. Her demonic appearance was shocking. She was like an evil spirit wreaking havoc in the world and reappearing in hell. How long can you last with true essence flowing in reverse? Tian Kuei asked with a soft sigh. Under the blood-stained Yama mask, Qi Yanxia did not say anything. Her figure shot out like a blood phoenix. With the support of a forbidden technique, her cultivation increased by several times as she charged toward the demonic cultivator in front of her. Tian Kuei did not dare to be careless when facing the Yama of the underworld whose cultivation had greatly increased. He pushed all his demonic qi to block the killing move. Blood qi and demonic qi intertwined as the 2 extreme powers clashed. Blood flowed continuously from the body of the Yama. However, her fighting spirit became more and more dazzling, making it difficult to look straight. Valiant expert, you are worthy of Tian Kuei using his full strength. With a shout, demonic qi split open the sky. Amidst a world-shaking phenomenon, a black pillar of light pierced through the starry sky. The stars within 50,000 li shook violently, unable to bear this world-shaking demonic power. Seeing that the demonic cultivator had completed his task and had taken off the Yama mask, Qi Yanxia let out a shrill cry. The last of her blood qi frantically burned. Half of the starry sky was dyed blood red, turning into hell. Extreme Emperor Heaven Scripture, return to the great desolation. The final move of the Extreme Emperor Heaven Scripture appeared for the first time since its creation. Qi Yanxia raised both her hands, and an indescribably vast force rapidly spread out, swallowing the world and returning it to the great desolation. The 2 extremes clashed. Amidst the world-destroying terror, many large stars collapsed. The aftershocks continued to spread, swallowing up the starry sky. Arg! In the starry sky, a waterfall of red splashed out. The Yama's figure retreated several steps, his life force rapidly dissipating and burning away. On the other side, blood dripped from the corner of Tian Kuei's mouth. He was injured for the first time. You are very strong, stronger than I expected. However, this is your limit. Tian Kuei stepped forward and extended his hand towards the mask on the Yama's face. The origins of the Yama of the underworld had always been the greatest mystery in the demon palace. Today, it would be revealed. Roar! Just as Tian Kuei's hand was about to touch the mask on the Yama's face, streams of draconic chi howled out once again, coiling around the world and blocking the demonic cultivator's hand. Tian Kuei looked at the blood gushing out of his hand and frowned slightly. Does he still have the power to resist? Amidst the 8 streams of draconic chi that filled the sky, the Yama stood silently. He did not move or say a single word. After a moment of stalemate, Tian Kuei's eyes narrowed slightly. Something's not right. I can no longer sense any life force from this person. As he stepped forward, streams of draconic chi sensed him and roared toward him. Tian Kuei raised his hand, and demonic chi stirred, blocking the streams of draconic chi. The 8 draconic chi dissipated, and there was no longer any obstruction in front of the Yama. Tian Kuei extended his hand to take off the Yama's mask. Suddenly, his expression changed, and he rapidly retreated. A purple stream of draconic chi coiled around the Yama's body, and then it exploded with a bang. Amidst the terrifying impact, the Yama's figure rapidly dissipated, completely devoured by the draconic chi. Tian Kuei's expression darkened as he looked at the scene in front of him. Even if he died in battle, he still wanted to destroy his own physical body. The Yama of the underworld had impressed him. Unfortunately, he had not been able to capture a Yama with such a good opportunity. It would be very difficult to succeed in the future. At the same time, in the royal palace of the 5 senses, a jade tablet shattered, symbolizing the fall of the Yama and his soul returning to the world. In the various palaces, the Yama of the various palaces sensed this, and their expressions all changed. Streams of light flashed through the various palaces, rushing toward the royal palace of the 5 senses. At the very front of the palace, the shattered jade tablet was scattered on the table. It was so dazzling that it was hard to believe. What exactly happened? The Aaron Ming King said, her expression completely cold. At the side, the expressions of Xia Zi, Yishuan Miao, Wu Qingying, and the others were all grave, and their killing intent was difficult to suppress. At this moment, the divine restriction above the underworld opened, and Ji Ming and the others, who had been fighting far away, descended from the sky. Something's not right. Ning Chen's expression turned grave as he sensed the auras of the people gathered in the royal palace of the 5 senses. Something seems to have happened. Nu Chang also sensed the abnormality and said, "Let's go." Ning Chen said, and his figure flashed, rushing toward the 10 palaces. Streams of light flashed in front of the royal palace of the 5 senses. Ning Chen led the way, and several people walked into the palace. When they saw the shattered jade tablet on the table, their pupils constricted. How could this be? Nu Chang and Luoshan walked forward and looked at the jade tablet on the table. They could not hide the sorrow on their faces. They had only left for a few days. How could this be? Ji Ming. Everyone turned around and looked at the plain-clothed figure at the entrance of the palace, waiting for the latter's orders. Ning Chen walked forward silently, walking past the crowd without saying a word. "My name is Qi Yanxia." In the past, in the Tower of Sharpness, that beautiful and confident figure had never lived as anyone's shadow. Empress Hayes was stunning and unique. "Wait for me to come back." After standing in silence for a long time, Ning Chen turned around and glanced at the crowd. Without saying anything, he walked out of the palace. The next moment, a stream of light flashed out of the 10 palaces and disappeared. At the same time, on the 2nd floor of the Waning Moon restaurant in Jinsei City, the owner of the Waning Moon restaurant, who was brewing tea, suddenly narrowed her eyes and looked out of the window. A stream of light flashed by. The tree wants to be still, but the wind will not stop. This world was always filled with the helplessness of life and death. "Hong Wan, go get a jar of good general's token. A distinguished guest is coming." Waning Moon put down the teacup in her hand and said calmly, "Yes." On the 1st floor, Hong Wan replied respectfully. In the starry sky, the phoenix spread its wings and flew quickly. Its speed was getting faster and faster. The phoenix could not hide its killing intent. Its murderous aura surged, and the demonic aura circulated. Wherever it passed, the space was torn apart. In the sky above Jinsei City, the phoenix materialized and descended from the sky. She took a step forward and instantly swept into the Waning Moon restaurant. Chapter 951. Jinsei City, Waning Moon Tavern. Jiming showed up and walked directly to the second floor. On the second floor, the door of the Ming room opened to welcome the guest. Jiming walked in and looked at the figure in the room. He said calmly, "House Master, I want to make a deal." Waning Moon Tavern Master put down the scissors in her hand and nodded. "Hong Wan, bring the wine." Outside the room, Hong Wan walked in with the general's token and placed it on the table. She poured wine for the two and stood aside quietly. "Brother Ning, please sit down." Waning Moon Tavern Master walked up and said. Ningchen walked to the table and sat down. He said directly, "I need to borrow the Ming scroll." Waning Moon Tavern Master narrowed her eyes. "Brother Ning must be clear about the rules." Ningchen nodded. "You can name your terms. Avicii Hell Palace or Linglong Celestial Tower," Waning Moon Tavern Master said calmly. "It's not easy to make a deal with you." While speaking, a light bloomed in Ning Chen's hand. A small tower appeared and a powerful aura filled the room. Waning Moon Tavern Master took the celestial tower and waved her left hand. The Ming scroll flew out and landed in Ning Chen's hand. "Thank you." Ning Chen took the Ming scroll and was about to leave. Waning Moon Tavern Master said. Ning Chen paused and looked at the person in front of him. He asked, "Is there anything else?" Waning Moon Tavern Master picked up the wine cup in front of her and said, "This wine is the general's token." Ning Chen was startled. After a while, he came back to his senses and picked up the wine cup in front of him. He drank the wine in the cup and said seriously, "Thank you." Waning Moon Tavern Master smiled and also drank the wine in the cup to see the person in front of her off. After drinking the wine, Ning Chen didn't stay any longer and left. "Take it." Waning Moon Tavern Master glanced at the woman behind her and said softly. Hong Wan walked up, took the wine, and left silently. Waning Moon Tavern Master stood up and looked at the figure in plain clothes outside the window. Light flashed through her eyes. Marquis Jiming hadn't changed at all. Even the best disguise couldn't change this fact. In the starry sky, a white-clothed figure walked past. Phoenix flames filled the sky, and a phoenix appeared, spreading its wings as it flew forward. At the end of the Red Lawn starfield, phoenixes were rapidly flying. Their speed was extremely fast as they rushed toward the distant All-Heaven starfield. In the All-Heaven starfield, a white-clothed young man was walking through the starry sky. He had a handsome appearance and an extraordinary air about him. At this moment, the cry of a phoenix shook the heavens above. A white-clothed figure descended from the sky, blocking the path of the Demon Palace's Tian Kuei. Mo Gate's ninth son. When Tian Kuei saw the person before him, a strange look appeared on his face. Why would he appear here? Without a word, Genesis Supreme appeared, his white-clothed figure flashing past, and the battle began. Tian Kuei narrowed his eyes and raised a hand to block the sword. His eyes turned cold as he said, "Ninth son of Mo Gate, since you've chosen this path, you'd better be prepared for a trip to hell. I am the King Yenluo of the underworld. Why would I fear returning to hell?" As the sound of his voice faded, a red light flashed as the Yama evil image appeared out of thin air. His astral souls were unsheathed, and the tip of his sword was about to strike. The extreme speed of the phoenix reappeared in the world. The sword that was fast to the extreme moved mercilessly. "You are." With a flip of his palm, Tian Kuei knocked away the sword in front of him. Tian Kuei's expression changed slightly. With such speed, this person must be someone. Have you guessed it? However, you won't have the chance to say it, Ningchen said coldly. Ningchen said coldly. Wind and snow surged on the Taisher sword. With a slash of the sword, thousands of miles of ice were sealed. On the other side, the phoenix flashed past with extreme speed. The sword was as fast as lightning, each strike threatening to kill. The King Yenluo of the underworld and the ninth son of Emogate are actually the same person. In that case, the identities of those Yama kings of the underworld are self-evident. Tian Kuei said with a cold expression. It was impossible for so many experts of unknown origins to appear in the world at the same time. When he thought of the origin of Emogate's ninth son, the identities of those Yama kings could be explained. Ningchen did not say anything else. With a shout, his origin energy soared. Sword technique, heavenly sword. 2 figures and a sword. 2 sword lights pierced through the starry sky. An abnormally powerful sword intent shook the stars as it slashed down from the sky. Tian Kuei narrowed his eyes and flipped his hands. Demonic chi stirred as he blocked the 2 swords. With a rumble, the might of the heavenly sword shook the starry sky. Wherever the remnant energy passed, meteors were turned to dust and disappeared. Sword technique, nothingness. After one sword, another rose. The sword cut through the starry sky, splitting the stars and splitting the sea, swallowing everything in its path. Smite was shocking. In the aftermath, Tian Kuei raised his hands to block the sword lights once more. With a rumble, the demonic chi scattered. This was a world-shaking battle. 2 figures and 2 swords. Their star souls and Genesis primes crisscrossed. Sharp killing intent accumulated in this intense battle. In the center of the battle, Tian Kuei's body surged with demonic chi. His figure constantly flickered as he circulated his extreme origin energy to block wave after wave of attacks. 8 perils of absolute calamity, calamity of the world. Seeing the attacks of the 2 figures growing fiercer and fiercer, Tian Kuei's expression turned serious. He used his ultimate move. Wildly surging demonic chi spread out and pressed down from the sky. Seeing this, the 2 figures immediately retreated. With a leap, sword lights filled the sky, crisscrossing with each other. It was incomparably magnificent. Nirvana. Nirvana reappeared. The 2 figures wielded swords. With unparalleled divine might, layers of sword lights slashed toward the demon palace's Kuei. The sword aura shook the demonic chi. With a world-shaking collision, the layers of sword lights collapsed. However, 2 streams of light rapidly shot past, charging into the aftermath. The 2 swords pressed down with overwhelming killing intent. Tian Kuei stretched out his hand to catch the 2 swords. Then, he leaned to the side and circulated his demonic chi to counterattack. The phoenix body flew out, avoiding the palm energy. However, his main body advanced instead of retreating. As he approached, he raised his palm to meet the attack. With a rumble, the aftermath howled. Ningchen gathered origin energy in his left hand, and the 9 heavens star-plucking hand appeared once more. A heavy palm swept past, landing on Tian Kuei's chest. Tian Kuei raised his hand to block his chest. With a rumble, wind, snow, and demonic chi surged for several hundred li. This was the first time the shocking cultivation and supreme foundation clashed. Even gods would weep and ghosts would tremble. This was an extremely murderous situation. It was not for victory or defeat, but for life or death. Filled with killing intent, knowing destiny no longer held back. His palm was like the waves of the sky, and his sword was like thunder. His powerful battle prowess was world-shaking. Inyue Heavenly Yang. After exchanging 100 moves, Ningchen activated his extreme origin again. Before he even used his move, his sword intent ravaged the surroundings. In the next moment, the move of the sword cannon appeared once more. The 2 of them worked together, and the Yin Moon and the Heavenly Sun appeared at the same time. The sword energy fell, slaying demons and destroying gods. 8 perils of calamity, sigh of gods and demons. Under the extreme pressure, Tian Kuei's divine power condensed. With a flip of his palm, he raised the sky. Amidst the terrifying demonic chi, 2 huge demonic gods and demons rose from the ground. They raised their huge palms and blocked the sun and moon. The 2 of them clashed, and the starry sky trembled. Amidst the dazzling light, the 2 of them and the demon each took half a step back. The corners of their mouths were dyed red. Yama's 3rd watch, Doomsday Heavenly Punishment. With hatred in his heart, his fury overflowed. What was the pinnacle of the sword? What was the pinnacle of the devil? The two of them worked together again. Amidst the surging thunder and fire, rays of sword light rose and fell. An instant later, thunder, fire, and sword light fell, destroying heaven and earth. Tian Kuei's eyes narrowed as he looked at the horizon. His cold eyes descended, and with a stomp of his foot, killing intent rose from all directions. Amidst this shocking scene, 8 bronze bells appeared in the world. Atop the bells were the 10,000 elephant carvings. Mountains, rivers, seas, suns, moons, and stars appeared one by one. In the horizon, thunder and fire converged into 10,000 swords. With a thunderous boom, heaven and earth became chaotic. Arg! The aftershocks caused blood to spurt out. Tian Kuei was forced back several steps. Dazzling cracks appeared on the 8 bronze bells. On the other side, the two of them had red lips. They forcefully suppressed their injuries and rushed forward once more. Sword and palm collided. Blood flowed, and the battle became white-hot. The injuries on both sides continued to accumulate. They were evenly matched, and the aftershocks howled, destroying the bodies of both sides. Shocked and shaken, Tian Kuei raised his hands to block his body. The indifference on his face had already disappeared, replaced by an unprecedented graveness. The Yama of the underworld and the 9th son of the Mahist Gate actually had the ability to stand on equal footing with him. This was truly unbelievable. This was a battle that they could not lose. They had to give it their all in order to slay the devil and comfort the souls of the dead. Ning Chen's fighting spirit continued to accumulate. He swallowed blood and suppressed his injuries. With the two of them working together, they erupted with a terrifying fighting strength. Just as the battle reached its climax, a figure in a silver-gray cloak appeared in the distant starry sky. As he looked at the intense battle in the distance, a strange look flashed across his face. Knowing Destiny Marquis, just how capable have you become? The more familiar he was with Tian Kuei, the more amazed he was. A person who was not used to cultivating had managed to forcefully reach his current level in just 100 years. Other than feeling rueful, he had no words to describe it. This Demon Palace's Tian Kuei was indeed a rarely seen supreme expert. Perhaps, after a few more years, he could succeed the Demon Lord and become the second supreme existence to enter the 4th level. However, the prerequisite for this was that he had to survive today's calamity. Boom! In the battle, sounds of collision rang out as palm after palm struck out. The battle between the two bodies and Tian Kuei had reached its most critical moment. The knowing Destiny Marquis, who no longer hid his identity, unleashed all of his martial arts. His fighting strength also reached its peak. His body was covered in wind and snow while his body was bathed in divine fire. The scene was shocking and his might was shocking. It was an incomparable battle. The person rose and the sword moved, the apex of elegance, the matchless ability. The two people's cultivations were raised to the limit. Facing the strongest enemy in their lives, their killing moves were majestic, not holding back. In an instant, they destroyed the sky and destroyed the stars. You are very strong, but what can you do? With a flip of his palm, Tian Kuei raised his true origin again. In an instant, the clouds in the sky surged like raging waves, sweeping in all directions. I, knowing destiny, am willing to slay the devil and sacrifice myself to become a devil. With a deep shout, his white hair whistled wildly. In the crazily surging devil chi, the black devil body appeared. Its deep eyes were without a trace of human emotion. Seeing this, the phoenix body flashed past and returned to its original body. The three bodies merged. Black eyes, red hair, and white clothes. The most violent state appeared for the first time in the world. With a step forward, blood rushed into the tide. The sick king's divine sword appeared in his hand, and black flames burned the world. Seeing this, Tian Kuei's expression changed. With a flip of his palm, he gathered true origin and blocked the divine sword. With a rumble, the slaying immortal sword cut through the devil chi barrier, bringing with it a waterfall of blood. In front of him, the cold and emotionless eyes were so dark that not a trace of light leaked out. Devil flames invade the heavens, The sick king waved his hand, and the devil flames burned. Ning Chen's body condensed into a sword, turning into the most merciless devil of vengeance. The sword cut through the devil's true origin. Gods and demons were shocked. In the sky full of blood, an arm flew out and was completely devoured by the devil flames. Tian Kuei grunted and retreated several steps. He held his severed left shoulder, cold sweat dripping from his head. As he looked at the violent and cold devil in front of him, fear rose in his heart for the first time. Retreat. Not daring to continue fighting, Tian Kuei stepped forward and immediately withdrew. Only death awaits you. Knowing destiny, Marquis said coldly. Behind him, blood-red phoenix wings spread open. With a step, he instantly blocked the path. Chapter 952. In the all-heaven star domain, phoenix flames filled the sky. Sun-clothed, blood-haired, and black-eyed figures held the ill king in their hands. The strongest knowing destiny had fused their three bodies into one. One hand was filled with wind and snow, while the other was filled with flames. They were extremely powerful, suppressing the demon palace's Tian Kuei. After 10 moves, the battle tilted. Tian Kuei was shocked, disbelief appearing on his face. 8 dangers, absolute calamities, Yellow Springs 100 years. Tian Kuei opened the 9 heavens with his palms. Demonic aura surged from his body like raging waves. His demonic might shook the heavens. Amidst the phoenix flames, Sun-clothed rapidly flew past. Her sword parted the demonic waves and arrived before the demon in an instant. Azure Dragon Descent. As the sword and palm clashed, Sun-clothed raised her hand and grabbed the demon's shoulder. The Azure Dragon roared and carried the two of them toward a nearby life planet. It was a shocking scene. In the starry sky, the Azure Dragon roared and crashed into the life planet. Cough. Tian Kuei coughed violently as he hurriedly escaped from a deep pit on the planet. 3,000 feet away, he coughed up a mouthful of blood that dyed his white clothes red. Below the pit, Ning Chen looked forward. He took a step forward, and his figure flashed past once more. His unbelievable speed was difficult to see with the naked eye. Tian Kuei's pupils shrank. Before he could react, he felt his throat tighten and his body fly away again. Boom! 100 miles away, a mountain collapsed. 2 figures shot out from the falling rubble, crashing through mountain after mountain. Tian Kuei's eyes were filled with shock. He struggled continuously, but he could not break free from the arm that grabbed his throat. It violently devoured his life force. 3,000 feet up in the sky, knowing destiny swung his right hand and threw the person in his hand. Boom! The white figure fell, kicking up a cloud of dust. Sun-clothed flew down from the sky. Her ice-cold eyes were filled with glaring killing intent. On the ground, Tian Kuei staggered to his feet. He raised his head to look at the horizon. However, his vision blurred, and Sun-clothed's figure appeared before him again. The 9 heavens plucking star's ultimate move reappeared. Her palm landed on Tian Kuei's chest. Ugh! With a muffled sound, Tian Kuei flew away. Ning Chen narrowed his eyes and moved at the same time. 10 miles away, he caught up to Tian Kuei and threw him into the sky. Below, Ning Chen raised his head. He took a step forward and soared into the sky. High up in the sky, Bai Yi arrived. Looking at the figure flying up below, she condensed her extreme origin energy and sent a heavy palm strike down. With a long and miserable groan, Tian Kuei's body fell once more. With a rumble, he crashed into the ground. The situation was completely reversed. He had gained the upper hand with one move and was suppressing the other with every move. The knowing destiny state cultivator had unleashed his full power and truly displayed the demeanor of the most powerful person in the world below the 4th realm. Even someone as strong as the Demon Palace's Tian Kuei could not fight back in the slightest. In the sky, a plain-clothed figure slowly descended. She walked step by step into the waves of dust. She raised her hand and grabbed the heavily injured Demon Palace's Tian Kuei. Then she raised her left hand and plunged it straight into the former's chest. The blood that splashed out dyed his white clothes red. It was so dazzling that Tian Kuei's life force gradually weakened. Beneath his scattered black hair, his eyes no longer had any of their former elegance. Ning Chen turned, grabbed the person in his hand, and then stamped his foot and shot up into the starry sky. In the starry skies, Ning Chen's gaze shifted to the silver-robed figure standing in the distance. With a wave of his hand, he returned the scroll to Ning Chen. His expression was calm as he said, "Many thanks, Tower Lord." With that, the plain-clothed figure shot out. She turned into a phoenix and quickly flew into the distance. Several hundred kilometers away, in the starry skies, the Dawn Moon Tower's master raised her hand and received the scroll. She looked at the departing figure in front of her, and a strange look flashed in her eyes. Even though she was mentally prepared, she had still underestimated this knowing destiny Marquis. With a flash of silver light, the Dawn Moon Tower's master dissipated. In the blink of an eye, she was gone. In the forbidden land of the demon domain, in the demon cave, a violent tremor rang out. Within the abnormally terrifying demonic waves, a dignified voice spread throughout the entire demon domain. In 100 days, we will send troops to the underworld. In the demon domain, many experts revealed shocked expressions when they heard this. Is the demon master finally coming out of seclusion? In the Sage Palace, Jie Tiance looked at the shattered jade tablet in the palace and sighed softly. Tian Kue, Di Kue, rest in peace. At the border of the three domains, a plain-clothed figure appeared before thousands of meteors. She waved her hand and opened the divine restriction, then shot into it. In the 10 palaces, many Yama kings sensed this and walked out. When they saw the plain-clothed figure descending from the sky, shock flashed across their faces. Who was the person in the knowing destiny market? Tian Kue of the Demon Palace. In the empty space in front of King Wuguan Palace, the plain-clothed figure descended with Tian Kue of the Demon Palace. With a casual flick, she threw him onto the ground. Several streams of light flashed past, and the Yama kings rushed over. When they saw the figure on the ground, the shock in their eyes could not be concealed. "Prepare to pay respects to Lady Yanxia," Ning Chen said calmly as he looked at the crowd. The Yama kings came back to their senses, suppressed the shock in their hearts, and nodded in agreement. On the ground, the severely injured Tian Kue of the Demon Palace was on the verge of death. His white robes were stained with blood, and he no longer had his former elegance. Female Supreme. Ning Chen looked at the woman beside him and said, "Take a look and see if he still has any value." The woman nodded and stepped forward. She stretched out her slender hand, and a faint brilliance spread out and engulfed Tian Kue's body. After a while, the woman withdrew her hand and said seriously, "There's bad news." "What is it?" Ning Chen asked. "That demon master will be coming out of seclusion soon," the woman said seriously. Ning Chen nodded and said, "I already expected this. Since this person has no other value, let's start paying respects to Lady Yanxia." After speaking, Ning Chen raised his hand, and Tian Kue's body slowly rose from the ground. In the next moment, red flames rose and burned his body. In front of the flames, the Yama kings stood silently, mourning the death of King Wuguan of the underworld. In the Southern Tomb's Tower of Competition, the world knew that Crown Princess Yanxia had been proud all her life, peerless and independent. In the final battle, she was the best song in the world. In order to not reveal the secrets of the underworld and to protect the safety of the Yama kings of the underworld, she did not leave behind her physical body even though she died in battle. The burning red flames burned the body of Tian Kue of the Demon Palace. He paid with his life for the death of Crown Princess Tianshu. The Yama kings standing in front of the flames all had heavy hearts. For the peace of the underworld, they could give up everything. There were people they treasured there, and no matter what, they would not allow anyone to invade them. The phoenix flames burned, burning away all traces. Ning Chen looked at the dancing flames in front of him and said calmly, "Someone needs to continue taking on the responsibility of King Wuguan. We need new experts to join us." On the side, Wu Qingying said, "Right now, only Her Majesty and I haven't taken on the responsibility of King Wuguan. If possible, leave it to me." Ning Chen shook his head and said, "It's not suitable. Miss Qingying's Liuye zither is too difficult to hide. It's not suitable for you to act in the dark." Also, on the surface, we also need battle strength. The candidate for King Wuguan is not suitable for you. Can I do it? On the side, said in a low voice. She didn't have much confidence. Everyone was stunned when they heard that. They looked at Knowing Destiny with puzzled looks. Ningchen turned around and looked at the girl beside him. After a long time, he said softly, I didn't want you to get involved in the war. However, everyone has to choose their own path. I'm sure you know the responsibility of King Wuguan of the underworld. Let me ask you again. Are you really ready? Was hesitant at first, but after a moment, her expression became firm. She nodded vigorously and said, I'm ready. Ningchen nodded and didn't persuade her anymore. He flipped his left hand and an evil mask appeared. He handed it over and said calmly, Since you're ready, then take on the mask of King Wuguan. Reached out and took the mask. She put it on her face. Suddenly, a strong aura rose and a faint brilliance overflowed. The little girl who had always been under Knowing Destiny's protection finally took the first step of growth. Master respects your choice. From today onwards, you're the new King Wuguan of the underworld. However, since you've taken this step, no matter how difficult the future is, you can't regret it. Do you understand? Ningchen looked at the girl who had grown up in front of him and said seriously. Under the mask of King Wuguan, nodded vigorously. On the side, Mu Qingxue looked at this scene quietly and didn't say anything. Although she didn't want this girl to take this path, she had to take it herself. Since had made her choice, she couldn't stop her. From today onwards, you'll learn the sword from me. Mu Qingxue looked at the girl in front of her and said in a tone that didn't allow her to refuse. When heard this, she nodded her head obediently and replied. On the side, the other kings of hell witnessed it. No one raised any objections. In terms of cultivation, had already reached the stepping immortal realm. No one could compare to her treasures. Once she went berserk, no one dared to underestimate her. What she lacked now was only battle experience. Most importantly, they urgently needed the power of the heaven speaker in this girl's body. Mortals could become gods. In the mortal world, there were only heaven speakers. This was their biggest hope to fight against the Demon Palace Master. After the memorial ceremony, everyone returned to their own palace. In front of King Wuguan's palace, Mu Qingxue took 2 steps forward and looked at who was walking into the palace. He said calmly, What exactly are you planning? Ningchen shook his head and said, Nothing. You can hide it from them, but you can't hide it from me. With your concern for this child, if you don't have any special plans, you wouldn't have agreed to let her inherit the position of King of Hell so easily. Mu Qingxue looked at the man beside him and said seriously, You know very well that although has the Western King hairpin and several heavenly books, she lacks battle experience. Her biggest reliance now is to awaken the power of the heaven speaker as soon as possible. This matter isn't difficult, but it isn't easy either. With your personality, you wouldn't let this girl die. What exactly are you planning? The Demon Palace's counterattack will come soon. Ningchen looked at the little girl in the hall in front of him. A gentle look appeared in his eyes as he said, I will do my best to arrange a path of retreat. However, everyone has their own ups and downs. In the end, the plans of man will not be as good as the plans of the heavens. Perhaps the next battle will be our final battle. If that day really comes, I will no longer be able to protect this little girl. Hearing this, Mu Qingxue's eyes narrowed slightly. Although he said so, she still felt that there was something wrong. Was it really so simple to let come out to train? Qingxue, go back and rest. Luo Xingchen has gone to look for the spirit vein for a few days. Once the news comes back, we will set out to arrange a way out. Ningchen smiled and instructed. Without saying anything else, he turned and walked towards King Wuguan's palace in the distance. Chapter 953. In the Yama Palace of the Underworld, Su Yi stood in silence, waiting for more than 10 days. In the sky, a green arrow broke through the space and fell from the sky. Ningchen stepped forward and took the jade scroll from the arrow. After a while, He destroyed the jade scroll with his right hand. Qingxue, let's go. Ningchen looked at the Impermanence Palace and said, in the Impermanence Palace, Mu Qingxue nodded and stepped forward, disappearing instantly. The two turned into beams of light and rushed into the sky. In the sky above the 10 palaces, the divine restriction opened. The two flew out and disappeared. In the Z-Way galaxy, in the center of 3 huge stars, a primitive planet floated. Countless ice crystals surrounded it, forming a beautiful meteorite belt. A few days later, the two arrived. Looking at the primitive planet in front of them, they stopped. Is this where the spirit vein found by the falling star is? Mu Qingxue asked. Yes. Ningchen nodded and said, let's go and take a look. After that, the two figures flashed and rushed toward the life star in front of them. On the vital planet, wild beasts roared and fierce birds tore through the sky. In the real primitive land, everything was not developed yet. The two landed. Ningchen scanned the entire planet with his divine sense and walked forward step by step. Mu Qingxue stepped forward to catch up with him. They walked forward together. The spirit qi is abundant and there are no traces of humans. This is indeed a good choice, Mu Qingxue said. Ningchen nodded and looked at the fierce birds flying in the sky. He said calmly, this place is in the Z-Way galaxy, not too far from the inner world. If something happens, we can rush back in time. This place is indeed the best choice for the underworld's base. Then let's start, Mu Qingxue said softly. Ningchen nodded slightly. A dark yellow light rose from his body as the scroll of earth appeared once again. In an instant, the ground within 1,000 miles started to rumble. Stone pillars rose from the ground one after another, forming the framework of the palace. In the next moment, Ningchen moved and jumped on top of the stone pillars. He flipped his palms. In the earth-shattering scene, the 10 Yama palaces shone with a strange light. With 100 stone pillars as the foundation, the underworld divine restriction was formed. The ability bestowed by the heavens was difficult to be grasped by humans. However, the wisdom of knowing one's destiny was rarely seen in the world. He was able to deduce the myriad transformations of the divine restriction, becoming the first person in thousands of years. Below, Mu Qingxue's eyes flickered as he looked at this stunning scene. His capability was truly terrifying. Perhaps only the military advisor of Northern Meng could be compared to him. Qingxue, it's your turn. On the stone pillar, Ningchen looked at the woman below and said. Mu Qingxue nodded and took a step forward. His figure soared into the sky like a fairy. In the air, Mu Qingxue raised his slender hands. Instantly, layers of sword lights slashed through the air and rained down from the heavens. The rumbling shook and startled hundreds of beasts. Tens of thousands of wild beasts and birds of prey felt the heavy sword pressure from afar and crawled on the ground in fear, crying out endlessly. The barren city's sword formation reappeared in the human world. Its power was earth-shattering. Before the formation was activated, the sword pressure had already swept out. On the stone pillar, Ningchen looked at the formless sword lights below and narrowed his eyes. Barren City was good at swords. Anything related to swords was truly at the peak of swords in Barren City. Just as the two of them were arranging Underworld's retreat, the Demon Palace's army was gathering in the All-Heaven Starfield. Countless experts rushed out of the demon region and rushed to the front lines. The war was about to begin. Countless gazes from various starfields and inheritances were focused on the All-Heaven Starfield. Everyone knew that the Demon Palace's target would be Underworld. The strength of these two ancient inheritances was astonishing. Now that it was a battle of life and death, no one knew who would have the last laugh. On the surface, the Demon Palace definitely had the absolute advantage. However, the Demon Palace and Underworld sovereigns had yet to appear. This was the true factor that determined the direction of the war. For the past 10,000 years, the Fourth Realm had completely disappeared from this world. This battle might break this rule and recreate the glory of the ancient times. Within the borders of Hell, numerous Yama kings stood quietly in front of the royal palace, their gazes fixed on the sky. They were very clear that a storm would soon arrive. This time, the Devil Palace would definitely be fully prepared. Whether or not they could survive this calamity, no one knew. Is Ji Ming not back yet? In front of King Pingding's palace, Xia Zi looked in the direction of King Yanluo's palace and asked calmly. He should be back soon. In front of King Yanluo's palace, Nu Chang narrowed her eyes and answered. The Demon Palace's army from the All-Heaven Starfield and the Red Phoenix Starfield gathered and attacked Underworld from different directions, sealing off all paths of retreat. In the final battle, the Demon Palace used all their forces. They were determined to completely destroy Underworld and eliminate all future troubles. In the Demon region, Jia Tians stood in the air and formed hand seals. 4 huge demonic figures appeared in the sky and guarded the Demon region where all the experts were. Wind Trust Sect, I'll leave this place to you. In the air, Jia Tians said calmly. Then, he took a step forward and turned into a stream of light, rushing into the distance. Below, in a palace, the Wind Trust Sect walked out and received the order to guard the Demon region. In the Ziwei Starfield, on a life planet between 3 stars, Ning Chen looked at the new location of Underworld that had been completely set up. After a moment of silence, he said, Qingxue, let's go back. Beside him, Mu Qingxue nodded and left with the people beside him. At the border of the 3 starfields, the Demon Palace's army continued to gather. The 2 armies arrived together. The 300,000 Demon Palace's army covered the sky and the sun. In front of the Underworld's 10 palaces, many figures walked out. Without saying anything, they raised their hands and put on their masks. Their figures flashed and flew into the sky. The divine restriction opened and the Yama kings walked out. Nu Chang and Wu Qingying stood on both sides, helping the Yama kings of Underworld to resist the Demon Palace's army. In front of the 300,000 Demon Palace's army, 30 demon generals stood in the air. In front of the 30 demon generals, Jun Wenyan looked coldly at the Yama kings of the Demon Palace. The 2 sides faced each other. The sun, moon, and stars shone brightly. The appearance of the 3 sects was shocking. King of Underworld, are you still not going to show yourself? After the appearance of the 3 sects, a blue light gathered and Jia Tians walked out. He looked at the people of Underworld and said calmly, The Demon Palace's Saint Arbiter has graced us with his presence. How can I not welcome you personally? As the sound of his voice faded, red light filled the starry sky. From the surging sword waves, a red-robed figure walked out. His powerful aura swept out in all directions. Wherever he went, the sword hummed. When the King of Underworld appeared, the expressions of the Demon Palace's 3 sects and the 30 demon generals turned serious. The heavenly and earthly kings died in the hands of this person. One of them might have underestimated the enemy. However, the fact that both of them died in the hands of this person was shocking. The King of Underworld might have been hiding his strength all along. The existence of this person was the greatest threat to the Demon Palace. Soldier against soldier, general against general. King of Underworld, please. Jia Tian spoke softly. With a wave of his hand, the black and white chess pieces flew out. The black and white chess pieces transformed into 2 swords. Under the Yama King mask, Ning Chen's eyes turned cold. He clenched his right hand and his astral soul appeared. Behind him, the 4 Yama Kings walked out and chose their opponents. Be careful. The female Chang exhorted softly and walked out, blocking in front of Jun Wenyan. Behind them, Wu Qingying waved her hand and a divine zither appeared. The 6 karmas attacked, and the red zither aura surged out. At the side, who had taken over the role of King Wuguan, stood there nervously. She held her red sword and didn't know what to do. Stand there and watch the battle. In front, Ning Chen transmitted a message to Yin. Then, he retracted his mind and looked at the saint of the Demon Palace in front of him. He said coldly, Saint, please. As soon as he finished speaking, his red robe flashed and sword waves swept out in all directions. Jia Tian swung his sword and blocked the sword. The mirroring technique appeared again. The 2 swords clashed and used the same move. It was as if they were facing an enemy. The white chess sword attacked with defense, while the black chess sword attacked with defense. The black and white worked together and there were no flaws. The perfect battle strategy was shocking. Ning Chen blocked the two weapons with one sword. His left hand formed a palm and the nine heavens star-picking hand appeared again. His heavy palms intersected and blasted towards Jie Tian's chest. Jie Tian leaned to the side and avoided the palm force. The black chest sword swung, and a cold light broke through the air. Xing Hun faced it head-on without dodging. With a boom, he clashed head-on with the Saint of the Demon Palace. The battle between the commanders of the two armies had just begun, and the pinnacle of martial arts was revealed. One was skilled in both sword and palm techniques, while the other was unparalleled in craftiness. It was a battle of the pinnacle. As the battle reached its climax, black butterflies filled the sky. A blue-robed figure with blood-red hair walked out. With the appearance of the demonic butterfly, the pressure on the battlefield increased. "You came after all." As he spoke, his white robe appeared. Under the impermanence mask, Mu Qingxue looked at the woman in front of him. He waved his hand and the shadow-bearing sword appeared. The Central Prefecture's saber god, the inheritor of Desolate City. The saber and the sword appeared for the first time. Diu, Nether King. Before the battle started, demonic energy soared into the sky. Amidst the abnormally horrifying chi waves, the demonic butterfly opened its beautiful wings. A vigorous demonic wave swept out for thousands of miles, shocking the world. Seeing this, Mu Qingxue also released his quintessence. Instantly, countless sword lights gathered in the sky. The huge sword wings opened, and its might shook the sky. It did not lose out to anyone. The saber and sword appeared at the same time. A moment later, the two figures disappeared at the same time. Extreme speed and martial arts clashed. Every move was shocking. Outside the battle, in front of the 6 Yi zither, Wu Qingying raised her hand to stop the music. Her hair danced wildly, and her weak expression could no longer be seen. Her scarlet eyes were filled with killing intent. The 6 Yi zither was majestic and shocking. It swept out in all directions, suppressing the cultivation of the experts of the Demon Palace and assisting the Yama kings. On the side, under the mask of King Wuguan, looked at the battle. She could not hide the shock on her face. She had always lived under the protection of her master. Only today did she know how terrifying a true expert was, and how cruel a true battle was. On the battlefield, blood splattered as the sabers and swords clashed. The glory of life was only breathtaking when blood bloomed. Everyone's persistence made the dancing sabers and swords even more resolute. Yama kings of the underworld, where is your sovereign? Is he still not willing to show himself? At this moment, a voice that shook the 9 heavens and 10 earths came from the distant horizon. Rolling demonic clouds covered the brilliance of the stars in the sky. The pressure was terrifying, and even the gods and ghosts were shocked. In the 5 battles, the experts of the Demon Palace sensed it. They moved to shake off the battle. Then, they bowed respectfully and welcomed their sovereign. "Welcome, Demon Lord." "Welcome, Demon Lord." In the starry sky, the 300,000 demon soldiers bowed at the same time, respectfully welcoming the Demon Palace's master. Chapter 954. In the battle of the underworld, demonic clouds covered the border. The master of the Demon Palace had arrived personally. Tens of thousands of demons knelt down to welcome the monarch. Amidst the rolling demonic clouds, a figure descended slowly. Demonic waves surged around him, and his terrifying aura was unprecedented. It surpassed the heavens and the earth, and everything prostrated before him. The Demon Master, the current monarch of the Demon Palace, the first expert above the 4th realm in the mortal world. As soon as he descended, the starry sky within 100,000 miles shook. Many large stars showed signs of instability, unable to withstand this shocking demonic might. In front of the divine restriction, the Yama kings looked at the figure walking over with heavy expressions. He finally came. "Retreat." Ning Chen, who was at the forefront of the battle, said calmly. Then he stepped into the air and retreated toward the underworld behind him. When the Yama kings heard this, they did not hesitate. Their figures flashed and retreated into the divine restriction. In front of the army of 300,000, The demon master, who was wearing the Jioli armor, walked over. He looked at the restriction in front of him. He raised his right hand, and tens of thousands of demonic waves crushed down. With a boom, an unshakable force collided with thousands of meteors. A shocking scene occurred. Thousands of meteors turned into dust under the demonic might and disappeared completely. In the divine restriction, the Yama kings could not hide their shock. Is this the power of the fourth realm? In front of the Yama kings, Ningchen shouted softly. He flipped his palms and released all his cultivation techniques to control the divine restriction. The divine restriction spread and spread continuously, turning into an inescapable net that engulfed the entire army of the demon palace. One restriction changed, and another appeared. On the continent of the underworld, countless stone pillars soared into the sky. Time flowed, and 100 years passed in a breath. Two great divine restrictions appeared at the same time. With the help of the terrain, their power was terrifying, making people feel suppressed in the depths of their souls. In an instant, the divine restrictions sealed the space within a radius of 10,000 miles. Time was merciless, devouring the vitality of all living beings. In the void, the demon master looked at the changing space around him, and a strange look flashed in his eyes. Time, the Yellow Springs? Ninth son of the Mo clan, come out. The demon master looked down and said calmly, Demon master, welcome to the underworld. As soon as he said that, a figure in plain clothes walked out of the stone pillars. He looked up and said calmly, Saint, I'll leave this person to you, the demon master said calmly. Yes. Jietians responded softly from behind. His figure flashed as he plunged downwards. On the stone pillar, the white-clothed figure revealed a strange smile. Her figure slowly faded and disappeared. I won't be participating in the war between the Devil Palace and the underworld. We'll meet again. When the black and white Go sword chopped down, it only chopped open an afterimage. The plain-clothed figure vanished and merged into the void. No aura could be sensed from her. What a strange movement technique. In the void, the demon lord scanned the area with his divine perception. He looked surprised, but he did not take it to heart. He looked at the Yama kings of the underworld and said calmly, Everyone, are the Yama kings still not coming out? There's no need. In front of the Yama kings, Ningchen looked at the terrifying demon palace master in front of him and said coldly. Below, Jietian's figure slowly rose and stood in the air. His eyes swept across the changing space-time in the surrounding sky as he said, Demon Lord, be careful. The space here is extremely unstable. If it collapses, our army will suffer heavy losses. The demon master nodded and said, Leave these people to me. You go and suppress the power of time in Yellow Springs. Jietians accepted the order softly. The black and white Go sword in his hand opened. Thousands of Go pieces flew out and flew in all directions to suppress the God-forbidden space. Luoshan, if you have the chance, take them away immediately. In front of the Yama kings, Ningchen transmitted a message. Then he clenched his left hand. In the black flames, the sickly king's divine blade appeared. Behind him, under the Yama mask, Luoshan sighed softly and agreed. With the demon lord appearing, they had no chance of winning. Now they could only retreat according to the plan. Demon Lord, please. Ningchen took a step forward and said calmly. Hearing this, the demon lord narrowed his eyes and said, Yama King, do you know what you are doing? Demon Lord, are you afraid to accept the challenge? Ningchen looked at the person in front of him and said calmly. The demon lord smiled coldly and said, I commend your courage. Since you choose to die, I will fulfill your wish. As soon as he finished speaking, demonic waves swept across the 9 heavens. In the dark space, the demon lord's demonic waves surged. Above the 9 heavens, the demon avatar appeared. A moment later, it disappeared again. In front of the Yama kings, Ningchen held 2 swords in his hands. Extreme Yin and Extreme Yang appeared together. Black flames and white frost shone. Yin and Yang intersected, and chaos appeared. A battle between kings, Yama King against the demon lord. The battle had not started, but the pressure had already swept across 10,000 miles. Watch carefully. From now on, you must remember every sword of masters. In the future, you will surpass him 100 times. Ning Chen transmitted a message. Without saying anything else, his figure flashed as he rushed forward. The palm and sword collided. Demonic waves swept across the sky, surpassing the realm of heaven and earth. Everything obeyed the command. However, the God-forbidden space sealed all laws. Only time and space existed to resist the demonic might. With the support of the God-forbidden space, the first move of the battle between the two experts broke the clouds and shocked the heavens. The astral soul left his hand, and blood splattered. Ning Chen's right hand grasped the sword again. He slashed down, and starlight from the 9 heavens fell. With a rumble, the demonic chi blocked the sword. The astral soul's momentum was hindered, and it could not move forward. Sword wind. With one sword blocked, another sword rose up. Within the black flames, Ning Chen urged his Yuan energy. The sickly king's sword spun rapidly, and with the support of the black flames, it broke through the demonic chi barrier. Such a foundation is indeed extraordinary. Yama, king of hell, what a pity! The demon lord raised his hand to block the sword that was advancing inch by inch. Soon after, his palm energy erupted, and demonic waves gushed out. A pool of blood splattered across the sky. The red-robed Yama retreated several steps, blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. His body was dyed red, and he did not speak. Ning Chen's feet trembled, and he stopped his momentum. His 2 swords reflected the moon, and the sun and moon soared into the sky. Black sun and silver moon, shocking the universe. The phenomenon of the sun and moon appearing at the same time. It was a combination of sword arts and Mahist immortal arts, a new move that appeared in the world for the first time. The sun and moon moved together, burning the heavens and freezing the earth. Wherever the sun and moon passed, the heavens and earth were separated. One half of the sky was covered in black flames, while the other half was covered in snow. The shocking scene shocked everyone present. Seeing this, the demon lord raised his hand and condensed his Yuan energy. Instantly, above the 9 heavens, demonic clouds surged, crazily rolling over. Open! With a light shout, a phenomenon appeared in the demonic clouds. In the rolling demonic Yuan, a huge demonic eye opened. Under the dim light, the image of the sun and moon instantly disintegrated. The sun and moon scattered, black flames and snow surged, and a red-robed figure flashed past. The sickly king's sword, and 100 suns broke through the sky. The 100 suns were like a tide, clashing with the demonic chi. Intense vibrations resounded, and the black suns were swallowed by the demonic chi, unable to pass through the heavens. Yama King's judgment, Avicii heaven wails. A sword soared into the sky and disappeared. Ning Chen pointed his finger at the sword, and starlight fell, strengthening the sword's might. The star soul slashed the demonic heart, blocking the demonic chi, making it difficult for the demonic chi to move. At this moment, the sickly king's divine sword that had disappeared appeared out of nowhere, and slashed towards the demonic chi's back. The 2 swords rushed towards the demonic chi, and in the earth-shattering collision, the 2 swords were sent flying, and a waterfall of blood splattered, dyeing the starry sky red. Without entering the 4th realm, where did you get the courage to face me? The demon lord said coldly. His body that was as immovable as a mountain had not moved a single step from the beginning of the battle. He knew that even if the storm was coming, he could not lose even half a step. Otherwise, the belief that he had always guarded would be in vain. Ning Chen shouted, and his hands clenched, and the 2 swords flew back. The unyielding fighting spirit once again held the sword that went against fate. Yama King's judgment, doomsday heavenly punishment. The 2 swords held up the sky, and the aurora soared into the sky. The black and white swords soared into the sky, and in an instant, above the 9 heavens, thunder rumbled, and black thunder and fire fell from the sky, engulfing the battlefield. In the dark night, the dazzling fighting spirit unleashed his combat power to the extreme. With the 2 swords in his hands, even gods and ghosts were frightened. Facing such a stunning opponent, the demon lord's expression gradually became serious. He raised his palms slightly, and thousands of layers of demonic chi gathered from all directions, turning into black clouds that circled around his body. With a loud bang, thunder and fire fell from the sky, colliding with the black clouds. The black flames that burned the world continued to attack the layers of demonic chi, frightening ghosts and gods. The heavenly punishment shook, and the black clouds formed by the demonic chi shook violently, disintegrating continuously. Seeing this, the demon lord frowned slightly, and his figure moved for the first time. He took a step forward, and his figure soared into the sky. The demon lord waved his hand, and with a palm strike, the demonic power swept out, scattering the tribulation clouds. One palm strike broke the move, and the other palm strike returned. The demon lord's aura penetrated the universe, and an extremely powerful palm strike broke through the sky, blasting toward the Yama king below. With determination in his heart and an undying fighting spirit, Ningchen raised the two swords in his hands and forcefully raised his true yuan to block the demon lord's palm. With a muffled groan, blood stained his red clothes. He was unwilling to take another step back, and forcibly stabilized his severely injured body, allowing blood to overflow from his body. Master? Behind him, under the Yama king's mask, his eyes were filled with tears. She wanted to go forward, but she was firmly held by the woman beside her, and could not move. Outside the battle, Jiatians, the three masters of the demon palace, Jun Wenyin, demonic butterfly, and 30 war generals were all staring coldly at the Yama kings in front of them. Once someone made a move, they would immediately be ready to kill. With no solution to the battle, the Yama kings' hearts became heavier and heavier. They could only watch as the knowing Destiny Realm experts fought while bathed in blood, but they could not go forward to help. Remember the faces of these people. In the future, take revenge for your master. The woman looked at the experts of the demon palace in front of her and said with a heavy expression, Yama King's judgment, reincarnation hell. The battle came to an end, and Ning Chen's true yuan was about to be used up. Ning Chen's tired eyes became even brighter, like the last light in the dark night, making it difficult for others to look at him directly. The sickly king and star soul sword shone, and the black and white hell appeared for the first time. Ning Chen used up all of his cultivation and went against the flow of life and death, causing his blood and chi to burn rapidly. At this moment, under the continent of the underworld, the trapping immortals sensed it. Boundless power of the ley lines rushed to the sky, and the entire God-forbidden space collapsed. Doomsday had arrived, destroying everything in the past. Close at hand, an opportunity appeared. Outside the battle, the goddess of Luo once again displayed her shocking ability. With a shout, the law of space descended, bringing everyone away from the destroyed God-forbidden space. Master! In the stream of light that was gradually moving away, looked at the collapsed underworld in front of her. Tears fell from her eyes like rain, and she cried out bitterly. The Yama Kings had just left when the black and white hell in the God-forbidden space devoured the heaven and earth. The immortal sword destroyed the ley lines, and boundless spiritual energy erupted. A terrifying explosion sounded, and violent aftershocks spread rapidly, reaching thousands of miles away. After dozens of breaths, the tremors of the heaven and earth gradually stopped. In the dark starry sky, a huge black hole appeared. The underworld that used to be there completely turned into nothingness and disappeared. Chapter 955. At the border of the three regions, where the underworld used to be, everything within a radius of 10,000 miles was turned into nothingness after an earth-shattering battle. In the black hole, demonic energy surged, and a majestic figure walked out with an unusually strong aura. Everything prostrated and wailed. Behind him, the saint of the demon palace, the three sects, Jun Wenyin, and the demonic butterfly walked out one after another with heavy expressions. To think that King Yen Luo of the underworld would be able to accomplish such a feat on his own. Count the losses and report to me. In front of everyone, the demon lord said coldly. He took a step forward and disappeared. Yes. Jie Tiance bowed respectfully and received the order. At the same time, in the Ji family of Ling Su, a secret report was sent to the Holy Temple. On the main seat, Ji Yuechu looked shocked after reading the secret report. The underworld was destroyed? Someone, invite King Qi immediately, Ji Yuechu said in a low voice. In the palace of Fengming City, Lin Yuzhen, who was dressed in a handsome royal robe, stood quietly with a worried look in her eyes, waiting for the news. Your Highness, the master of the Ji family invites you. A guard stepped forward and bowed respectfully. Lin Yuzhen came back to her senses. She nodded and said, Okay, you may leave. The guard accepted the order and stood up to leave. Lin Yuzhen moved and turned into a ray of light, rushing toward the White Emperor City in the distance. In the holy temple of the Ji family, a ray of light flew into the temple. Her extraordinary body movements were eye-catching. King Qi appeared. In the holy temple, the black and yellow ancestors of the Ji family looked over and saw the king of Beiki who had been fighting against the Ji family for 100 years. They had heard of King Qi, Lin Yuzhen, for a long time. Greetings, master. Lin Yuzhen looked at the master of the Ji family on the main seat and bowed politely. Your Highness, please take a seat. On the main seat, Ji Yuechu said. Thank you. Lin Yuzhen thanked him and walked to the guest seat at the side and sat down. This is the secret report from the spy. Your Highness, please take a look. Ji Yuechu flipped his right hand, and a ray of light flew out and swept forward. Lin Yuzhen reached out and took the secret report. After reading it, her expression gradually sank. Your Highness, what do you think? Has the underworld really been destroyed? On the main seat, Ji Yuechu said with a grave expression. That's the truth. I have no choice but to believe it. Lin Yuzhen sighed. When Ji Yuechu heard this, his eyes darkened. If the underworld was really destroyed, then it would be even harder to stop the footsteps of the Devil Palace in the future. In the Ziwei Galaxy, in the new location of the underworld, a primitive planet floated between 3 stars. It was a place where there was never night. It was like a celestial mirror, so beautiful that it was intoxicating. However, that day, dark clouds covered the sun. Heavy rain poured down from the sky, obscuring the eyes of the common people. On the vast planet, the 10 Yama palaces stood in front of the king of Hell's palace. Their faces were filled with sorrow as they looked at their clothes burning in the torrential rain. In front of the flames, knelt there helplessly. The tears in her eyes had long dried up. She allowed the rain to fall and soak her body. Behind them, Mu Qingxue silently looked ahead without saying a word. It was so quiet that it was somewhat frightening. Knowing destiny, how can you bear such an ending? Looking at the gazes of the crowd, Nu Chang sighed in her heart. Mu Qingxue walked forward and gently helped the helpless girl up. He said calmly, Come with me to practice the sword. Without saying anything, Mu Qingxue pulled In away and walked away. In front of the king of Hell's palace, Xia Zi looked at Nu Chang and said coldly, Nu Chang, is knowing destiny really dead? Everyone has seen it with their own eyes. Why are you still asking me? Nu Chang looked away and said. Hearing this, Xia Zi narrowed his eyes. He felt that something was wrong. If knowing destiny could find a way out for them, why didn't he leave one for himself? The arrival of the Devil Lord was indeed sudden. However, with knowing destiny's wisdom, it was impossible for him not to know that this day would come sooner or later. Or was it that knowing destiny had the determination to die from the beginning and wanted to destroy the Devil Palace together with him? Xia Zi looked back at the king of Hell's palace. His eyes flashed coldly. Knowing destiny, you'd better be alive. Otherwise, he wouldn't care about the safety of the underworld anymore. In the newly built king of Hell's palace, the demonic weapon Holy Glory was surging with demonic chi. Within 100 feet of the palace, the divine restriction was sealed. The phoenix fire continued to rise and burn the first divine weapon of the Devil Palace. The supreme demonic weapon and the holy phoenix fire fought fiercely in the divine restriction. Perhaps one day, the demonic weapon would appear again and shock the world. In front of the palace, Nu Chang walked forward. Looking at the divine weapon of the Devil Palace floating in the phoenix fire, light flashed in her eyes. He really put in a lot of effort for this disciple. Apart from the incomplete immortal slaying and immortal trapping swords, this was the first time she had seen such a powerful weapon. Even true realm experts couldn't control this demonic weapon. Once it was refined, it would be the most powerful weapon for that girl. The divine weapon cried sadly. Endless demonic chi was being devoured by the phoenix fire day after day without stopping. Outside the King of Hell's palace, Nu Chang was dancing with his sword. When Jie Tian's turned to leave, the Devil Master's voice sounded in his ears. When the generals left the hall, Jie Tian's turned around and looked at the Devil Palace's master on the throne. Devil Master, do you have any other instructions? It's about the holy glory. The Devil Master stood up and walked down the hall. He said calmly, Mo Gate's 9th disciple took away the holy glory. This person is proficient in the yellow spring and time restriction. He cannot be underestimated. Find his whereabouts as soon as possible. I will personally deal with this trouble. I will do my best. Jie Tian's nodded. There's one more thing. Not long ago, a power that surpasses the mortal realm appeared in the Reverence Moon Holy Ground. This matter must be investigated as soon as possible. The Devil Master reminded. Jie Tian's acknowledged. Withdraw and do your work. The Devil Master said calmly. This subordinate will take his leave. Jie Tian's saluted respectfully, then turned and walked out of the hall. At the same time, Hongwan Star Field, Golden Dawn City, Dawn Moon Restaurant. In the bright room on the second floor, two figures sat across from each other, drinking wine. Wearing a silver-gray cloak and a plain white robe, the two people sat in front of the table, neither of them spoke. Hong Wan stood quietly at the side, pouring wine for the two people in silence. Cup after cup, jug after jug. After drinking several jugs, the Dawn Moon Restaurant master put down her wine cup and said with a faint smile, The cold and heartless Jiming Marquis, you didn't hesitate to sacrifice millions of people. Now, you're here drinking wine to drown your sorrows. What, is your heart aching? Opposite her, the plain-clothed figure put down the wine cup in his hand and said calmly, Humans are not made of stone, how can we be heartless? That's your most beloved disciple. I didn't expect you to make such a choice. The Dawn Moon Restaurant master looked at the young man in front of her and said softly, I've arranged 2 paths for her. If she doesn't accept the responsibility of the King of Hell, I won't force her and let her continue to grow without worries. However, if she chooses to accept the responsibility of the King of Hell, I can't be soft-hearted anymore. Qi Yanxia risked her life to protect the glory of King Wuguan. Even can't blaspheme it. Therefore, she must be strong enough to bear this burden. The plain-clothed figure said calmly, Are you so sure that the origin of Tianyu in her body will awaken? The Dawn Moon Restaurant master asked. The plain-clothed figure shook his head and said, I'm not completely sure, but this is the most likely method. Since she chose this path, she can't live under my wings anymore. When she leaves me, it'll be the time for her to truly grow up. Hearing this, the Dawn Moon Restaurant master showed a hint of emotion and said, In this round, the Demon Palace suffered a heavy blow. You returned to the dark side and hid in the underworld to avoid the Devil Master. You also pushed your disciple to grow quickly, killing 4 birds with 1 stone. I admire you for this round. You're too kind. Opposite her, the plain-clothed figure picked up his wine cup and said calmly, Scheming against the people you cherish is not worth boasting about. The Dawn Moon Restaurant master sighed and said, One day, she'll understand your good intentions. Chapter 956. In the Z-Way starfield, between 3 huge stars, on a primitive planet, 10 majestic palaces stood tall and majestic. In the new location of the underworld, the divine restriction shielded all heavenly secrets, allowing the Yama kings to rest and recuperate. In front of the Yama King Palace, day after day, the girl practicing her sword was unwilling to rest for even a moment. There was no night and the sword in her hand never stopped. Not far away, Mu Qingxue in a white dress stood quietly, accompanying as she practiced her sword. There was not the slightest emotion on her beautiful face. In the palace, Nu Chang looked at the little girl outside and sighed softly in her heart. Ning Chen's accident was too big of a blow to Yin. That girl who loved to act spoiled and throw tantrums seemed to have grown up overnight. Ji Ming, if this is the result you want, isn't it too cruel? 10 days, 100 days. After a world-shaking battle, the underworld seemed to have completely disappeared from the world. There was no more news about it. The Devil Domain and the Ji family, these two behemoths gradually became the focus of everyone's attention. Everyone knew that in the next step, these two ancient inheritances would truly compete with each other. White Emperor City, Ji family. Everyone gathered in the palace. The Ji family's grand elders all had grave expressions. Now that the Demon Palace's army had moved out, they had to speed up. Chi Tian Pavilion still hasn't responded? On the main seat, the Ji family's sacred master looked at the 9th grand elder below and asked. No response yet. The Ji family's 9th grand elder replied. It's better to rely on oneself than on others. The Demon Palace is now very powerful. Before the situation becomes clear, how could those old fellows from the Chi Tian Pavilion be willing to get involved in this mess? One of the black and yellow grand elders said coldly. On the main seat, Ji Yuechu sighed softly and said, It's too difficult for our Ji family to stop the Demon Palace alone. Contact the various sects of the Spirit Void sect. The lesson of Hong Luan and the All-Heaven Starfield is right before us. They should know what to do, the other grand elder said. Ji Yuechu nodded and said, I've already sent people to contact them. However, the Demon Palace's power is too powerful. Furthermore, they have that Demon Master. Without the help of a power like the Underworld, the Ji family's future path will be difficult. When the supreme elders of the Ji clan heard this, their expressions grew increasingly solemn. What the Sacred Lord said was the truth. The combat ability of the Devil Palace far surpassed that of the Ji clan. It was almost impossible for the Ji clan to block them. Outside the Spirit Void Star region, 180,000 demon soldiers pressed in. Demonic chi spread out like dark clouds, covering the sky and the sun. It was a shocking sight. In front of the army, Jun Wenyan stood in the air. He was the commander of the army, leading the army to Lingshu. Beside Jun Wenyan were the Star Moon Sect and Moon Sect, who were in charge of protecting the Devil Army's commander. With the lesson of the Earth Chieftain before them, the two of them did not dare to be careless. They were vigilant against any movement. Not long before the war between the two realms was about to break out, all of the Yamakings in the Z-Way star system had already been recuperating for many days, and their powers had all been restored to their peak, but none of them had left. Instead, all of them remained in the Imperial Palace. In King Yama's palace, Yin-Er's perspiration splattered all over her body. The vermilion sword in her hand danced gracefully. In the past 100 days, her sword skills had improved at an extremely fast pace. Without sleep or rest for 100 days, even an Iron Man would find it hard to endure. While Yin-Er's sword skills were improving rapidly, her physical and mental exhaustion had also reached its limit. Not far away, Mu Qingxue quietly looked at Yin-Er's demon-like state. After a long time, he stepped forward and pressed down the little girl's sword. He said calmly, That's enough. Ina's eyes recovered from the daze. Looking at the woman in front of her, her beautiful eyes reddened slightly before they became firm again. Mistress Mu, I'm not tired. That's enough. Mu Qingxue pressed down on the former's sword and said, Go and rest. Mistress, who said anxiously. Go and rest. Mu Qingxue's expression turned cold as he reprimanded her. Yin-Er's body trembled. After a moment, she nodded lightly. Without saying anything else, she silently kept her sword and walked towards the Imperial Palace. In the Imperial Palace, the woman looked at the girl walking over and sighed in her heart. Yin-Er, don't be too impatient. Learning the sword is not something that can be accomplished overnight. You have already done well enough. Yin-Er forced a smile and didn't say anything else. She walked to the room at the side and directly fell onto the bed. Extreme exhaustion hit her. Ina's consciousness quickly blurred and she instantly fell into a deep sleep. In the Imperial Palace, Mu Qingxue walked over. Seeing the door of the room that was not closed in time, he said softly, "Female Supreme, Ning Chen is not dead, right?" Hearing this, a strange look flashed across the woman's eyes. She said, "Why do you ask?" "It's just my intuition." Mu Qingshue's expression remained calm as he said, "If all of this was arranged by him, then we need a person of virtue and prestige to control the situation. As a senior, the female supreme is the only choice." Hearing this, the woman couldn't hide the surprise in her eyes. It seemed that they had all underestimated this woman from the desolate city. "This is just your guess. What if something really happened to Ji Ming?" The woman suppressed the waves in her heart and said, "I know him. Before he finishes what he has to do, he won't die so easily. It's not easy to live, but in order to live, he will do whatever it takes." Mu Qingxue said softly. The woman sighed. No wonder Ji Ming specially told her to be careful when talking to the woman in front of her. Just as the woman opened her mouth and admitted that all of this was arranged by Ji Ming, there was a sudden change in the room at the side. A terrifying fluctuation of heaven and earth appeared out of nowhere. The law of nature gathered rapidly and crazily from all directions. Breaking through? How can it be so fast? The woman and Mu Qingxue sensed something and their expressions changed. Not good. Mu Qingxue was the first to come back to his senses. His figure flashed and he rushed out of the imperial palace with In-Or in his arms. In each of the Yama halls, the Yama kings sensed something and walked out. Looking at the tribulation clouds gathering in the sky, they were all shocked. How could it be the true realm? Oh, wake up. Thousands of miles away from the imperial palace, Mu Qingxue stopped and looked at the girl in his arms with a serious expression. However, her consciousness seemed to be controlled by something. No matter how he called her, she couldn't wake up. With a rumble, angry lightning fell from the 9 heavens. Under the boundless pressure of the heavens, everything within thousands of miles instantly collapsed. Under the lightning, Mu Qingshue's expression turned serious. He put down the girl in his arms and waved his hand. The Qing-Ing sword appeared in the sky. "Thousand swords greeting." Mu Qingxue took a step forward and entered the void. At the same time, boundless sword light gathered from all directions and transformed into a pair of gigantic sword wings. Mu Qingxue waved his Qing-Ing sword and a shocking sword light broke through the void and soared into the 9 heavens. The sword radiance shook the angry lightning. In an earth-shattering collision, thousands of thunderbolts collapsed. The heavens were furious. Before they could take a breath, thousands of thunderbolts struck down to punish the sinner who blasphemed the heavens. As the thunderbolts fell, Mu Qingxue didn't step back. The huge sword wings on his back vibrated and he pushed his true yuan to the limit. He faced the heavens again. Chapter 957. In the underworld, above the 10 palaces, the tribulation clouds loomed. The terrifying heavenly might rose rapidly, frightening the ghosts and gods. Thousands of miles away from the king of Hell's palace, Mu Qingxue used all of his strength to protect the unconscious girl after he manifested his gigantic sword wings. Thousands of swords bowed to the ancestor, thousands of swords in the mortal world submitted. The desolate city's world-shaking sword appeared again, splitting thousands of thunderbolts. The firmament was furious, and thousands of thunderbolts struck down. Even more terrifying thunderbolts struck down, suppressing those who defied the heavens. In order to protect Mu Qingxue didn't retreat. Instead, his sword wings flapped, and his figure soared into the sky. Thousands of thunderbolts struck down, and the Qing-Ing sword met them head-on. With an earth-shattering boom, the thunderbolts collapsed. The white-robed figure soared into the sky with extreme speed. Mortals who defied the heavens couldn't be forgiven. The firmament was furious. In an instant, the tribulation clouds turned from black to red. Thousands of thunderbolts struck down, shocking the world. 7 ultimate arts, startling swan-piercing Sunday, the Taishang indifference appeared. Mu Qingxue turned the sword in his hand, and a majestic sword rainbow pierced through the sky, slashing towards the blood-red thunderbolts. The power of man could shake the heavenly might. Amidst the rumbling, the sky was filled with sword feathers. Mu Qingshue's figure paused, and a trace of blood flowed down from the corner of his mouth. The heavenly tribulation couldn't be blocked. This was a truth that everyone knew. Because of the firmament's fury, the firmament would pour down 100 times, killing all those who defiled the firmament. In front of the 10 palaces, the kings of hell's expression turned serious. Not good. Boom. The blood-red clouds rolled, and thousands of thunderbolts struck down. The firmament's fury was even more shocking. The blood-red thunderbolts were like an ocean, drowning the girl below. On the ground, O was still in a deep sleep and didn't know what was happening outside. At the same time, a white-robed figure appeared in the sky, surrounded by chaos, covering his aura. Qingxue. Ningchen looked at the injured white-robed girl in the sky, and a trace of pity flashed through his eyes. After a while, he forcefully suppressed his impulse to attack. He looked at the sleeping girl below, waiting for the result. Since the situation had reached the stage, he couldn't interfere unless it was absolutely necessary. Otherwise, all his previous efforts would be wasted, and all his arrangements would be in vain. Amidst the blood-colored lightning sea in the horizon, Mu Qingshue's body was covered in swordlight. His body was like a bolt of lightning, blocking the 10,000 layers of heavenly lightning with extreme speed. The hand that was holding the sword was dyed red, and blood was dripping down. However, Mu Qingxue was determined, and he did not retreat even half a step. Sword after sword, he went against the heavens. Knowing destiny. In front of the Yama King Palace, Nu Chang stared at the scene in the air as light flashed in her eyes. Are you still not going to show yourself? In Jinsi City, on the second floor of the Dawn Moon Chang, the owner of the Dawn Moon Tower, dressed in a silver-gray cloak, walked to the window and looked into the distance, sighing softly in her heart. The world was chaotic, and the demonic tribulation was endless. Benevolence and soft-heartedness were the most superfluous emotions. Jiming Marquis, what will you choose? In the demon region, on the throne of the Sage Palace, the demon lord stood up and walked to the front of the palace. He looked at the Hong Luan star region in the distance, and a strange look flashed in his eyes. The catastrophe of the true plane seemed to be somewhat unusual. Saint Arbiter, check who is going through the tribulation, the demon lord said calmly. Yes. Jie Tiance walked out from the sacred palace and responded softly. The sky opened and traced back to the source. Jie Tiance formed a seal with his hands, and a strange power spread out and merged into the world, peeking into the mysteries of heaven. In the sky, blood-colored clouds of tribulation appeared. However, everything under the clouds was difficult to see clearly, as if something was interfering with the mysteries of heaven. Strange. With a wave of his hand, the black and white chess pieces flew into the sky. Jie Tiance raised his hand and pointed at the mysteries of heaven. The strange light shone brightly and flowed continuously into the clouds. In the next moment, the black and white chess pieces appeared between the 3 suns in the Ziwei star region. Then, thousands of chess pieces gathered and turned into black and white chess swords, slashing at the divine restriction in front of the clouds of tribulation. In the air, Ningchen saw this and narrowed his eyes. He took a step forward and instantly swept out of the vast star. He formed a sword with his fingers and blocked the black and white swords. The black and white chess swords were blocked. With a rumble, they were sent flying hundreds of feet away. In the sage palace of the demon region, Jie Tiance narrowed his eyes. Someone had blocked him. Who was it? In front of the demon palace, the demonic lord turned around and stepped forward. He looked at the scene in the sky and did not say a word. He raised his right hand, and a terrifying force entered the sky to assist him. In the Ziwei star region, between the 3 suns, Ningchen looked at the black and white chess swords that were filled with demonic qi. His eyes turned cold. Was it the demonic lord? Gathering energy in his palm, the starry sky sword. Thousands of sword qi gathered. The aftershock caused the phantom of the Great Supreme to dissipate. Mu Qingxue took half a step back and groaned. Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth, adding to his injuries. In the distance, the space swirled and a white-clothed figure walked out. Her aura was concealed by the Chaos Scroll, so no one could see her. Under the tribulation clouds, blood splattered and bloomed in the sky. It was so beautiful. Ningchen looked at it silently and did not say anything. The white dress that was dyed red was reflected in his eyes and heart. Even if his heart was as hard as steel, it would still be soft. However, Ningchen's body did not move at all. The knowing destiny Marquis was the most ruthless one. It was like this in the past and it was still the same today. Boom! The tribulation became more and more powerful. It dyed the entire sky red. The beautiful figure in white stood in the sky. Blood dripped from the sword in her hand. Her body was heavily injured. At this moment, a soft sigh sounded in the sky. The lightning in the sky paused for a moment and did not fall. In the sky, an illusory figure walked out. His aura was otherworldly. One could vaguely see the unparalleled elegance of the past. The heavenly word had a girl, the only one in the human world. Disperse. The heaven speaker's voice was calm and gentle, without a trace of anger. He looked at the sky and spoke. As soon as he finished speaking, the heavens and earth sensed it. The rolling tribulation clouds in the sky quickly dissipated. Not long after, they disappeared. In front of the palaces, the Yama kings were shocked. This was the heaven speaker, the only one in the human world who could talk to the heavens? How terrifying! In the sky, the heaven speaker looked at the girl in front of him and said softly, "Miss, thank you." Mu Qingxue looked at the illusory figure in front of him and his eyes flashed. This should be the senior from the heaven speech peak that Ningchen mentioned. As soon as he finished speaking, the heaven speaker looked at the white-clothed young man in the distance and said, "Thank you." 1,000 miles away, Ningchen nodded. He was not surprised that he was discovered. To a certain extent, the heaven speaker was equivalent to a part of the world. As long as he was in the world, it would be difficult to avoid his detection. In the sky, Mu Qingxue frowned and looked at the direction the heaven speaker was looking at. A strange look flashed across his face. Was it him? Or was she overthinking? After his last glory, he disappeared quietly. In the sky, the heaven speaker's figure gradually dissipated. The last soul imprint of the human world returned to the heavens and earth. On the ground, the sleeping In-er slowly opened her eyes. In an instant, an incomparably majestic power gathered from all directions and entered her body. In the distance, seeing that In-er had woken up, Ningchen was finally relieved. He did not dare to stay any longer and left quickly. On the ground, Er seemed to have sensed something. She looked at the sky and raised her right hand. The wind and clouds in the sky rolled and thousands of lightning bolts struck down. The power was earth-shattering. This girl. In the lightning, Ningchen's figure flashed quickly and avoided the lightning bolts. He disappeared quickly. In the sky, Mu Qingxue's figure landed. Looking at the girl who had woken up, he asked softly, "Are you okay?" Seeing the woman in front of her, came back to her senses. She smiled and said, "Thank you, Master's wife. I'm fine." "That's good." Exhaustion flashed across Mu Qingxue's face. She did not let him down. "Master's wife, I'll bring you back to heal." Supported the former and said softly. Then, her figure flashed and flew towards the direction of the 10 halls. Outside the divine restriction, Ningchen walked out. Looking down, he heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, this girl had just woken up. Otherwise, it would not be easy for him to escape. Now was not the time for him to show himself. He could only apologize to them in the future. Chapter 958. In the Spirit Void Star Zone, the army of the Demon Palace had been on an expedition. The Ji family, Beiki, and the allied forces of various sects resisted with all their might. The flames of war spread for hundreds of thousands of miles, and there were many casualties. Jun Wenin commanded the 3 armies to attack fiercely. The allied forces of the Spirit Void Star Zone retreated again and again. Within 100 days, several planets with life were lost, and blood stained the starry sky. The generals of the Star Moon sect and the 18 demon palaces displayed their powerful combat power, assisting the first guardian of the demon palace, Jun Wenin, and making the elites of the Spirit Void Star Zone suffer. In the battlefield, the white-clothed figure watched the battle quietly. From beginning to end, she hid in the dark and never showed herself. All along, he and the underworld had been at the forefront of the fight against the demon palace. Even if he wanted to hide his identity, he was still in danger of being exposed at any time. Now that the demon lord had appeared, it was not suitable for the kings of hell to appear in the open. After many days of observation, the white-clothed figure faded and disappeared from the battlefield. In the palace of Fengming City, Lin Yuzhen read the battle report from the front line. Her eyes flashed. It was really not good. Your Highness. At this moment, a white-clothed figure walked out from the void. Looking at the cross-dressing woman in front of him, he spoke. Brother Ning. Seeing the man in front of her, Lin Yuzhen was shocked and exclaimed. Although she guessed that nothing had happened to him, seeing it with her own eyes still made her heart tremble. After a short moment of shock, Lin Yuzhen came back to her senses. Looking at the person in front of her, she asked in a low voice, "What happened?" "It's a long story, I'll explain it later." Ning Chen said seriously, "Your Highness, why didn't the Ji family ask the Qi Tian Pavilion for help? In the current situation, if something happens to the Spirit Void Star Zone, the Ziwei Star Zone will definitely become the next target of the Demon Palace. If we don't join forces now, we will undoubtedly be destroyed. The Ji family has already sent people to contact them, but the Qi Tian Pavilion has not relented. They should be afraid of the Demon Lord. After all, a fourth realm existence is really terrifying." Lin Yuzhen sighed softly. Hearing this, Ning Chen frowned slightly. A fourth realm was indeed unmatched. It seemed that it would take some effort to ask the Qi Tian Pavilion for help. "Brother Ning, do you have any ideas?" Lin Yuzhen asked seriously. "Heaven Mending Pavilion is afraid of that Devil Master. Unless we have a way to deal with the Devil Master, it will be very difficult to convince them otherwise." Ning Chen calmly analyzed. Lin Yuzhen nodded and said, "Based on the current situation, although Beiki and the Ji family can barely stop the advance of the Demon Palace's army, this is only a temporary illusion. Once the Demon Lord makes his move, the situation will tilt to our side. In the end, the root of the problem lies with that Devil Master." Brilliance flashed across Ning Chen's eyes. The crux of this battle was whether they had a way to stop the only fourth-level cultivator in the world. "Brother Ning, you are the only person in this world who has fought against that Devil Lord. If you join forces with this king, how long can you resist him?" Lin Yuzhen asked. "Half an hour at most." Ning Chen pondered for a moment before replying. "Previously, I used the divine restriction that was set up in the underworld in advance, as well as the immortal slaying and immortal trapping techniques. However, it was still difficult to block his attacks. The fourth realm is different from our realm. Unless we can find a way to restrain him, it doesn't matter how many people we have." "Is it possible to use the method you used to deal with the Nether King?" Lin Yuzhen asked with a serious expression. "It's impossible." Ning Chen shook his head and said, "The Devil Master is different from the Nether King. When the Nether King descended into the world, his physical body was unable to withstand his power. On top of that, his source energy was lacking, causing his true energy to fluctuate for a short period of time when he attacked. Thus, Mu Qingxue and I joined forces with Zi's assistance. Only then were we able to break through the Nether King's dual aura seas. However, the Devil Master's body does not have this weakness. Even if we suppress his attacks with extreme speed, the result will not be optimistic." "In that case, is there truly no way?" Lin Yuzhen asked with a grave expression. Ning Chen was silent. After a moment, he said, "I'm going to the Immortal Graveyard Danger Ground." "The All-Heaven Starfield's Immortal Graveyard Danger Ground?" Lin Yuzhen's expression changed as she exclaimed. "In." Ning Chen answered softly. He said, "I have some things that I need to clarify. Your Highness must take care of yourself while I'm away. Do not fight against the Devil Palace head-on." Lin Yuzhen nodded. She did not ask any more and said with a serious expression, "You must also be careful. There are dangers everywhere in the Immortal Graveyard Danger Ground. If there's any danger, come out immediately." "Understood." Ning Chen nodded. He said, "Time is of the essence. I'll be leaving first. Your Highness, farewell." After he finished saying those words, space swirled, and a plain-clothed figure entered it and disappeared. Lin Yuzhen looked in the direction that Ning Chen left. A trace of worry flashed through her eyes. The immortal graveyard danger ground's ominous reputation was known throughout the world. She hoped that nothing would happen to Ning Chen. No one knew where they came from or where they went. Ning Chen's figure flashed and rushed into the ghostly aura. He wanted to follow them, but the talismans were destroyed. Tens of thousands of Yin soldiers disappeared into thin air. Ning Chen stopped, and light flashed through his eyes. Something was wrong. He had never thought about it carefully. Now that he thought about it, it was not the first time he had encountered these Yin soldiers. Where were so many Yin soldiers being transferred? Was the underworld destroyed in ancient times? What were they trying to do by transferring so many Yin soldiers? Also, what was the identity of the woman who looked exactly like the ghost lady among the immortal corpses? The ghost lady was the Yama king of the underworld, so what about that woman? Ning Chen's mind was disturbed, and he could not figure it out. He suppressed the waves in his heart and walked forward step by step. The more he experienced, the more he felt that there seemed to be an invisible force controlling something in the dark. After walking through a deep valley and crossing a mountain, a gloomy fog appeared before him. Ning Chen paused. The yellow spring forbidden ground should be in front of him. The changes of the divine forbidden ground were endless. Even he could not fully grasp it. The yellow spring forbidden ground here was very powerful. Last time, he did not prepare and entered by mistake. It took him 3 years to get out. After thinking for a while, Ning Chen waved his right hand. Immortal trapping appeared and sank into the ground. He did not hesitate and walked into the divine forbidden ground. After an instant, there was a violent tremor. Red light shot up from the ground. Sword lights crisscrossed and attacked the divine forbidden ground. Inside the divine forbidden ground, Ning Chen stood quietly. He looked at the violently shaking divine forbidden ground and tried his best to find a flaw. 2 hours, 4 hours. Within the divine forbidden ground, the silhouette did not move at all. Under the attack of the sword lights, the divine forbidden ground's changes became more and more intense. After an unknown amount of time, the silhouette finally moved. He waved his hand and the sickly king showed his power. The execution immortal sword once again displayed its peerless power. The person moved, the sword moved, the person turned into the sword, and the sword merged with the person. Boom! In a shocking scene, the divine forbidden ground and the sword lights collided. The two immortal swords combined and the divine forbidden ground in front of the mountain collapsed. In the void, the sword lights dissipated and the silhouette walked out. Ning Chen waved his hand and the sickly king slashed down again. 1,000 zhang long sword light cut through the sky and the mountain in front of him was split in two. Inside the mountain, blood qi permeated the air. Black iron chains crisscrossed, and countless talismans flickered with terrifying lightning. Vaguely, a silhouette was faintly discernible. His hair was dyed in blood, and he looked extremely miserable. Within the chains, the sinner raised his head and looked at the silhouette outside the mountain. His purple-black eyes flashed. It was him. Senior. Ning Chen walked in. Looking at the person before him, he politely bowed. Just as knowing destiny entered the immortal graveyard, celestial music resounded in the all-heaven starfield. 3 dragon corpses pulled a palanquin and rushed past. Ahead of them, the demon region blocked the path of the immortal corpses. The immortal corpses were ancient legends. For countless years, they had been moving forward without stopping. They seemed to be searching for something. From ancient times until now, they had searched every corner of the starry sky. Before the demon region, the 3 dragon corpses drove past. They did not change their direction and directly crashed into the immortal corpses. Many experts sensed this and were shocked. Rumble! Amidst a shocking collision, the immortal corpse crashed through one demonic palace after another. It was an absolute suppression, destroying everything in its path. Chapter 959. Immortal Graveyard, Immortal Sword Mountain Range. An earth-shattering tremor resounded through the forbidden land, and the huge mountain split apart. Inside the mountain, chains crisscrossed and locked the sinner, trapping him for thousands of years. Ningchen walked in and looked at the chained figure in front of him. He bowed respectfully. "Senior, it's you." In the chains, the man raised his head and looked at the person in front of him. His voice was hoarse. "Why did you come back so quickly? You haven't entered the fourth realm yet, have you?" "No." Ningchen shook his head. His expression became serious. "Senior, I came here because I have something to ask. I hope you can answer me." "What is it?" The man looked tired. "Other than the fourth realm, is there any other way to kill a fourth realm cultivator?" Ningchen asked seriously. Hearing this, the man's purple-black eyes shone brightly. He said slowly, "Why do you ask? Could it be that a fourth realm cultivator has appeared in the human world?" Ningchen nodded and said calmly, "To be honest, that is the case. However, this person is not a human, but a demon. He can't come to save you. On the contrary, he will kill everyone in the human world who can enter the fourth realm, including me. So, I came here to ask you about a way to restrain a fourth realm cultivator." After hearing this, the man fell silent. After a long while, he shook his head. "The fourth realm is different from any other realm. After entering this realm, unless there is a power of the same level, nothing can kill them. Senior, you should be a fourth realm cultivator. Can you kill this demon?" Ningchen asked seriously. The man nodded and sighed. "But I can't go out. Also, only a fourth realm cultivator can save me." Ningchen's eyes narrowed slightly. He took a few steps forward and looked at the chains that trapped the former. He asked, "Do we just have to break these chains?" "That's right." The man nodded and said tiredly, "However, these chains are made of divine gold and are indestructible. Later, they were tempered with dark lightning. Anyone below the fourth realm who touches them will either die or be injured." "I see." Ningchen looked back and said, "In other words, to save you, not only must you have a cultivation level that can withstand the lightning, but you must also have a peerless divine weapon that can break these divine gold chains." The man nodded and replied softly. Ningchen took a few more steps forward. He looked at the crisscrossing black chains and personally felt the power of the mysterious thunder. He raised his hand and pointed with his finger. A ray of sword light broke through the air and slashed at the chain. However, there was an ear-piercing sound of thunder. Before the sword chi could get close, it was swallowed by the thunder on the chain. "Don't waste your energy. This dark lightning is not something from the mortal world. With your cultivation, you are still unable to fight against it," the man said in a hoarse voice. Ningchen frowned. Light flashed in the depths of his eyes as he flipped his right hand. A broken green cauldron appeared and flew forward. Black thunderbolts surged like the cries of thousands of birds, blasting towards the green cauldron. The thunder collided with the green cauldron, and an ear-piercing sound of collision rang out. The invincible thunder was actually stopped, unable to destroy the green cauldron. Inside the heavy chains, the man revealed a look of shock. He looked at the broken green cauldron floating in the void, and a hint of fear rose in his heart. Was this the celestial cauldron from the eastern celestial world? Tens of thousands of thunderbolts struck, but the green cauldron stood still like a mountain. Ningchen looked forward and raised his right hand again. The immortal trapping sword flew out and turned into a ray of light, rushing straight towards the green cauldron. The immortal trapping sword? The man's expression was once again shocked. A hint of joy appeared on his face, but it quickly dimmed again. The immortal trapping sword was not known for its sharpness and could not cut through these chains. If it was the immortal slaying sword or the immortal slaying sword, perhaps he would have a chance to get out. The immortal sword flew into the green cauldron. Red light rose, and it continuously swallowed the dark thunder in the green cauldron. At the same time, the immortal corpse patrol sped over from the demonic zone. It did not dodge and directly crashed into it. Shocking sounds of collision rang out, and the demonic palaces collapsed and disintegrated. In the palace of the Seven Sins clan, Feng Xinzong sensed it. Murderous intent appeared in his old eyes. His figure flashed and came to the front of the main palace. In front of him, the Immortal Corpse Patrol charged forward without stopping, destroying all obstacles. "How dare you!" Feng Xinzong's face was filled with anger. He raised his hand to block the Immortal Corpse Patrol. Boom! The three dragons crashed into the gale. Faint divine light rose, and in the gale, the Immortal Corpse Patrol charged out and crashed into the Seven Sins clan's main palace. The violent impact caused Feng Xinzong to spit out blood. His figure retreated, crashing into demonic palaces one after another. In the sacred palace, Jie Tiance looked outside the palace. His eyes narrowed. He waved his right hand, and the Go Bag soared into the sky. Thousands of black and white Go pieces flew out, turning into Go swords. In the demonic zone, the Immortal Corpse Patrol crashed into dozens of demonic palaces. Its momentum did not stop as it continued forward. The black and white Go swords flew past, their bodies growing larger and larger. The blade of the swords slashed toward the three dragon corpses. With a boom, divine light shone brightly on the dragon corpses. The black and white Go swords cracked and shattered. "Yama, king of the underworld, you are finally willing to show yourself." As he spoke, the figure on the throne of the sacred palace disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in front of the three dragon corpses. He raised his hand to command the heavens and earth. The wind and clouds swirled as he received the order to block the Immortal Corpse Patrol. As the Immortal Corpse Patrol clashed, the Immortal Corpse Patrol's momentum was hindered for the first time. At this moment, the woman in the palanquin, who had not moved at all, finally stood up and walked out. Her red wedding dress was dazzling. Under the red veil, her blood-red lips could be vaguely seen. She was so beautiful. The Immortal Corpse Patrol reappeared. "Yama Emperor." Her red lips parted slightly. Amidst the divine light, a purple divine sword descended from the sky. In an instant, an extremely terrifying sword pressure swept out, frightening the gods and Buddhas. On the opposite side, seeing the divine artifact in the former's hand, the demon lord's expression turned serious. It was the underworld's #1 divine artifact, Yama Emperor. Not daring to be careless, the demon lord made the first move. The demon lord flipped his palm. In an instant, demonic clouds swirled violently above the 9 heavens. Demonic lightning descended from the heavens, aiding the demon lord. The Immortal Corpse Patrol and the divine sword shook the demon lord's palm. With a terrifying collision, the palaces around the two turned into dust and completely disappeared. In front of the sacred palace, Jie Tiance walked out. Looking at the two supreme powerhouses fighting in front of him, his eyes narrowed slightly. If the ancient underworld hadn't been destroyed, then why had it remained hidden all these years? Were those Yama Kings really from the underworld? As he was thinking, the battle in front of him was a battle between the Immortal Corpse Patrol and the Demon Lord. Sword and palm collided, stirring up the 9 heavens. It was shocking. After several exchanges, it was difficult to gain the upper hand. The Demon Lord's expression turned serious. His demonic aura soared into the sky and pierced through the starry sky. He absorbed the 9 heavens' demonic refinement into his body. The ultimate demonic technique appeared in the world for the first time. 10,000 demons' heavenly tribulation. The ultimate power descended, and the demonic might shook the heavens. Under the red veil, the woman's expression did not change. She stepped out, and the ghost chi around her surged like 1,000 waves. 10,000 ghosts walked in the night, opposing each other. Chapter 960. In the demon territory, immortals and demons fought. Above the 9th heaven, demonic clouds rolled, and the howls of thousands of demons shook the earth. The demon lord roared as the source of thousands of demons gathered. He raised his hand and parted the sky. As the demonic power descended, the woman in the red wedding dress did not dodge. Ghost chi gathered around her as she activated Yama and slashed the demons. Boom! The divine artifact slashed thousands of demons. Ghost chi rushed into the sky, drawing a dazzling sword mark between heaven and earth. The first divine artifact of the underworld had appeared. The thousands of demons dissipated. The demon lord focused and raised his hand to block Yama. With a bang, his legs sank into the ground. The demon lord's eyes flashed, and his aura rose again. He clenched his fist and punched out. The rapidly approaching Yendi crashed into the demon's fist. There was a violent tremor as the earth between the two of them cracked. Outside the battle, Jie Tiance looked at the battle in front of him. He raised his hand and made a seal. Chess pieces flew out and formed a barrier, blocking the waves. All the experts in the demon territory acted to help the Saint Arbiter and protect the demon territory. While the demons were guarding the demon territory, the battle between the immortals and demons became even more intense. The two sides clashed. Sword light and demon fists were like waves. Wave after wave of attacks shocked the gods of the ninth heaven. Sun-concealing demon technique, astral palm. The demon lord raised his hand and channeled the power of the stars. The demon lord's body shone with a strange light. His unparalleled cultivation increased, and the supreme martial arts of the demon palace showed its shocking power. It swept across the land and the sky cried. Under the pressure of the powerful palm, heaven and earth were shocked, and everything collapsed. In the palm wind, the Yama king of the underworld was as still as a mountain. Her slender hand passed the sword, and purple sword light rolled out. It gathered the ghost chi of heaven and earth, and the power of the ghost wilderness appeared again. Ghost wilderness art returned to nothing. Her voice was casual, without the slightest breath of the mortal world. Yama slashed through the woman's hand. Suddenly, the ghost chi disappeared, and the sword light continued to sweep forward. With a bang, the sword light hit the ghost chi barrier. In the violent impact, the demon lord took half a step back and fell slightly. As expected, the Yama king of the underworld didn't disappoint me. Pay attention, the real battle is coming. The demon lord looked at the woman in front of him, and his expression became serious. He took a step forward, and the demonic clouds in the sky swept over. In an instant, a huge demonic eye opened in the power of the demonic clouds. Under the dim light, everything in the world turned into nothingness. Below, the woman was surrounded by ghostly chi. Endless ghostly chi swept out and blocked the demonic eye in the sky. In a battle that transcended the boundaries of heaven and earth, the battle prowess of the two fourth-level cultivators continued to rise. A terrifying pressure spread out, and the cultivators of the demonic zone all vomited blood, unable to withstand this power that transcended the boundaries of heaven and earth. Not good. Outside the battle, Jie Tiance's expression turned solemn. This king of hell was too powerful, and the devil lord had no time to care about him. If this continued, the devil's domain would be completely destroyed before the outcome of the battle could be determined. As his thoughts turned, Jie Tiance looked at the three dragon corpses outside the battlefield. A cold glint flashed across his eyes. He waved his hand and held his sword. The two swords crossed, and a cold glint flashed past. In the battle, the woman sensed something. She swung her sword and shook off the battle. Her figure flashed past and blocked in front of the dragon corpses. With a slash of her sword, she scattered the black and white sword light. In an instant, the devil lord took a step forward and instantly appeared in front of him. His heavy fist condensed into essence and landed on the king of hell's chest. 100 ghosts trapped the sky. At the moment of crisis, a cold voice rang out from the palanquin behind. Suddenly, 100 ghosts flew out and blocked in front of the woman. With a boom, the devil lord's attack was restrained. The woman turned her hand and landed a palm on the former's chest. Caught off guard, the devil lord grunted and took a few steps back. Blood dripped down and dyed his armor red. The devil lord looked at the palanquin in front of him, and a look of shock flashed across his eyes. There was another cultivator. In the palanquin, the red-clothed ghost lady sat quietly. Her empty and cold eyes did not show any emotion. Her delicate face was so beautiful that she did not seem like a mortal woman. She was so noble and extraordinary that no one dared to look at her directly. Devil Lord, you can't fight anymore. Jie Tiance, who was outside the battle, reminded the Devil Lord as he looked at the half-destroyed Devil Domain. In the battle, the Devil Lord's expression darkened slightly. He raised his hand to suppress the injuries in his body. He looked at the cultivators in the palanquin in front of him who had yet to come out. 2 Fourth Realm cultivators. How could it be? Was there a second Fourth Realm cultivator in the underworld other than the King of Hell? In the battle, the woman stood quietly. Seeing that the person in front of her was no longer attacking, she did not continue to fight. She waved her hand and put away the King of Hell. Her figure flashed and returned to the palanquin. In the next moment, the palanquin drove past, knocking away the palaces blocking its way, and continued to move forward. Looking at the palanquin disappearing into the distance, the Devil Lord clenched his fists, unable to suppress his anger. At the same time, in front of the crisscrossing chains in the immortal graveyard, thunder shook the sky and the immortal trapping cry echoed, constantly devouring the power of the surrounding thunder. With the green cauldron as the weapon and the immortal sword as the guide, it forcibly devoured the thunder on the chains. What are you doing? In the chains, the man looked at the former's actions and said seriously, these thunder will keep regenerating. It can't be erased. Ningchen did not answer. He continued to urge the immortal sword to devour the power of the thunder. After an hour, the thunder in the green cauldron had reached its limit. The immortal sword's red light flashed, bobbing up and down in the green cauldron. A powerful devouring force spread, restraining the eruption of the thunder. His goal was achieved. Behind Ningchen, a phoenix appeared. It opened its mouth and swallowed the green cauldron. In the chains, the man's eyes darkened when he saw this. He said, the immortal trapping sword and the immortal cauldron are both damaged. They can't suppress the thunder for too long. Once the thunder goes out of control, the power of the backlash is not something you can withstand. Senior, thank you for your reminder. This junior will be careful. Ningchen said softly. He looked at the man in front of him and said, Senior, how can I save you? If one day you can withstand the thunder and find a peerless divine weapon like the immortal slaying sword or the immortal slaying sword, you may be able to save me. In the crisscrossing chains, the man said with a tired face. Ningchen nodded and said seriously, this junior understands. Senior, you have suffered. After this junior gets out, I will do my best to find a way to save you. However, this junior's talent is lacking. It may take a long time before I can come back again. When the man heard this, a light flashed in his tired eyes. He raised his head and looked at the plain-clothed young man in front of him. He said, Wait, I have something to give you. As soon as he said this, the man shouted. His purple-black eyes shone brightly. A majestic power awakened, shocking people. At the same time, thunder exploded on the chains that locked the man's body. Terrifying thunder penetrated the man's body, preventing him from using his true essence. The man groaned in pain. He endured the pain all over his body. A drop of purple-black blood flew out from between his eyebrows and entered the former's body. After the soul blood left his body, the man's face quickly withered. He looked at the young man in front of him and said with extreme exhaustion, This contains my comprehension when I broke through to the fourth realm. I hope it can help you. Thank you, Senior. Ningchen bowed and respectfully bowed. This junior will remember Senior's kindness in his heart. In the future, this junior will do his best to repay Senior. After saying this, Ningchen didn't stay any longer. He turned around and walked out of the mountain. The moment he walked out of the mountain, Ningchen's expression returned to normal. He looked back at the man in the mountain behind him. The depths of his eyes were as calm as water without any ripples. Sometimes, it was really difficult to distinguish between good and evil. Chapter 961. In the spirit void, the flames of war raged across the sky. The army of the demon palace advanced all the way to the east. With the 3 pinnacle cultivators of the demon palace working together, their attacks were unstoppable. In front of each life star, demonic chi surged as dozens of demon soldiers marched forward, heading to the next life star. In front of the army, Jun Wenin, who was wearing the water cloud battle suit, was standing on top of a war chariot. demonic energy was surging around his body, and he looked like a peerless expert whose might had shocked the major star fields. In the short span of 100 days, the sects of the spirit void realm had lost a few more life stars. The attacks of the demon palace were becoming more and more difficult to resist. Ji family's sacred hall. On the main seat, Ji Yuechu looked at the battle reports that came in one after another, his face becoming more and more gloomy. If this continued, they would completely lose the chance to counterattack. However, that demon master had not made a move yet, so they did not dare to rashly launch a large-scale counterattack. The current situation could be said to be a dead end, and there was no way to resolve it. Sacred Master! Below him, the Ji family grand elders all had anxious expressions. Half of the spirit void territory had been lost. If the demon army advanced further, they would not be far from the Ji family. On the main seat, thoughts flashed through Ji Yuechu's eyes. After a long while, he said in a deep voice, "Go and invite Prince Qi, prepare to counterattack with all your might." One of the supreme elders stood up and respectfully accepted the order. In front of the royal palace in Fengming City, Lin Yuzhen looked at the battle report from the front line with a solemn expression. The combat power of the Devil Army was really shocking. If this continued, the entire Spirit Void Star region would be devoured by the Devil Palace. "Your Highness, the Ji clan's 9th Grand Elder requests an audience." Right at this moment, a guard stepped forward and said respectfully, "Please." Lin Yuzhen said as she collected her thoughts. The guard accepted the order and turned to leave. Not long after, the 9th Grand Elder of the Ji family walked over quickly. Looking at the Phoenix Cry King, he bowed politely and said, "Greetings, Your Highness." "Ninth Elder, you don't have to be so courteous. What brings you here?" Lin Yuzhen asked directly. "The Saint Lord invites Your Highness to discuss the counterattack," the Ji clan's 9th Grand Elder said seriously. Lin Yuzhen narrowed her eyes and nodded. "Please wait a moment." As soon as she finished speaking, Lin Yuzhen clenched her right hand and a ray of light flew out from the imperial palace behind her. The divine weapon of Beiki had reappeared in its peerless glory. "Let's go." Lin Yuzhen gripped her sword and stepped forward. After a few breaths of time, the two figures disappeared and sped off into the distance. Just as Beiki and the Ji family were preparing to counterattack, in the Red Phoenix Star Zone, between the three divine suns, three kings of hell stood in the air. In the middle, whose eyes were closed, looked nervous as if she was facing a great enemy. "There's no need to be nervous. Just display your strength." Outside the battlefield, Mu Qingxue looked at the girl among the three Yama kings and said. Ender nodded, and her tightly shut eyes slowly opened. Suddenly, the wind and clouds in the sky became chaotic, and an unusually strong pressure came from all directions. In the battle, Mu Qianshang, Ai ran, and Luoshan revealed strange expressions. Was this the power of a heaven speaker? It was truly astonishing. "Luoshan," said Aaron Ming. "N." Luoshan nodded and raised his right hand. Immediately, the wind and clouds in the sky dispersed. The power of a god was strong enough to shake the power of the gods. Outside the battle, Nu Chang looked at the battle with a solemn expression. "This battle is going to be difficult. Luoshan has the body of a deity, so his suppression of In-Er is the most obvious. Now that they have joined forces, In-Er is going to suffer. Even if she chose this path, she can't be afraid of suffering." Mu Qingshue's expression was calm. Now that her master is not here, there's no one to protect her. She must learn how to protect herself. As the two spoke, the three Yama kings moved together. A purplish-red figure flashed past, and the green moth sword was drawn. Ren's eyes narrowed, and she dodged the sword light that came close to her. She raised her hand, and the sky and clouds were swept away. Too slow. Yixuan Miao slashed the wind and clouds with his sword. His sword momentum did not stop, and every move was merciless. The cold sword pressed down, and Iner's figure kept retreating. Unexpectedly, the Buddha energy behind her was like a wave, and they joined forces to attack her. Her palm landed on Iner's left shoulder, and Ai ran immediately withdrew 90% of her strength and retreated. 3 moves. Outside the battle, Mu Qingshue's expression turned cold. In the battle, AI ran, Luotian, and Yi Xuanmiao sighed in their hearts. When this woman of Desolation City became ruthless, it was truly impressive. Mu Qingxue usually doted on her, but today she was like a completely different person, completely cold and heartless. Among the three, his eyes were filled with grievance, but she still endured the pain on her shoulder and focused on the next round of battle. AI Ranming moved first, and the golden Buddha light was dazzling. The vast power broke through the sky and clouds and swept over again. Her raised her hand to block the palm, and a rumbling sound was heard. Between the two, waves of air rolled, and the sky and earth trembled. Green Moth Neon. The moment their palms met, the green moth neon arrived again, and the sword whistled, drawing a dazzling sword light, and broke through the sky. Sensing danger, Ira raised her left hand, and thunder surged, and blocked the sword light. Using two palms to block the attack, the aftershock shook. In, who controlled the power of heaven and earth, swept the wind and clouds, protecting her body, and nothing could break through. Finally, it's a little interesting. Outside the battle, AI Rant's eyes flashed with gratification. It was not easy to nurture an expert, and had excellent aptitude and foundation, but her battle experience and comprehension of martial arts were too far apart. If she did not work hard, it would be difficult for her to achieve anything. Silence Samsara. In the battle, the moment the three were in a stalemate, Luotian raised her hand, and Samsara descended. Instantly, a huge space vortex appeared in the battle, and swallowed the three. In the vortex, AI Ran and Yi Xuanmiao's figures disappeared, and they were sent out of Samsara. Yinu's expression changed slightly, and she activated her vital essence, using the power of heaven and earth to protect her body, resisting the devouring power of Samsara. Heavenly punishment. Samsara was difficult to break. Shouted, commanding heaven and earth, and heavenly punishment appeared for the first time. In an instant, the sky changed, and dark clouds rolled, and endless lightning fell, drowning the battle. In the battle, the three Yama kings were surprised, and their figures flashed, avoiding the layers of lightning. Not bad. Under the lightning, Luotian said softly, and with a flip of her delicate hand, divine power appeared again. Heavenly punishment, borrowing sword from the heavens. In an instant, between heaven and earth, thousands of sword lights gathered, condensing into one, and turned into a huge sword that pierced through the air. Divine power and heavenly might, the two extreme forces collided, and violent aftershocks spread out, and the battle was immediately separated, and the four of them retreated dozens of feet. At the same time, outside the divine restriction, a plain-clothed figure appeared, looking at the battle in front, and a gratified expression appeared on his face. It seemed that his choice was correct. Only by leaving his wings could this girl truly grow up. Just like when he left Zhang Xuan's wings, also needed to grow up independently. Ji Ming, quickly come to Xiao Yucheng, and there is something important to discuss. At this moment, a solemn voice resounded from within the chaos scroll. It was a voice transmission. Hearing this, Ning Chen's expression turned serious, and he did not stay any longer. His figure flashed, and he rushed to the distant Red Phoenix Star region. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.